Okay, the Legal Affairs Committee will come to order. Councilor Gould, will you sit in for Councilor Gravel, please?
Yes, sir.
Councilor Garabedian's here. Councilor Matsoulis is in the House, and Councilor McGinn is here. Councilors, we have a couple items on the agenda that we are not going to take up tonight if there's no objection, and that would be the item A. There's a request to leave it in committee for the time being, so that further work can be done on that among several parties. And then item B is the recreational marijuana, and item C, there's a request for a license easement, and we'll discuss that in a minute, whether we go forward with that. But item B is the retail recreational marijuana ban. And we have both the mayor and our city solicitor here. But there has been some concern expressed, and I'm going to let Councilor McGinn speak first, Mayor, if you don't mind. And then we'll just see where we're going to proceed tonight. So, Councilor McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would welcome, Mr. Chairman, I'd welcome any comments from the city solicitor or the mayor on this. We have a communication that that was attached to the packet that we hadn't previously seen, so I just want to move to receive that draft zoning amendment that was provided in the package. So moved.
Okay, councilors, you heard the motion on that roll. On that, all those in favor? Any opposed? It is a vote. Mayor, do you want to? Yeah.
Evening, Council. Okay. Press the on button. Well, good evening, Council. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on this important topic. I've spoken on this many times. I think you've all heard my strong feelings about retail recreational marijuana. I'm steadfastly, vehemently against having retail recreational marijuana in this city. And really it comes down to a question as to what type of city do we want to be? What direction as a community do we want to go in? I strongly believe that there are dangerous consequences by allowing retail recreational marijuana in our city. And I believe moving forward with a ban, which we're allowed to do, is the appropriate action. Just to give you some history, and I know Mike Smazinski, who's been doing an amazing amount of work on this very topic now for several months, can speak to it more than I can. However, the law was changed. Governor Baker allowed now cities and towns where the communities had already voted against it, which as you all know, City of Peabody voted against marijuana in the most recent election in November. By doing that, now as a city council, we're allowed to make a vote on that rather than it going to a referendum. And I think it's important because there were different laws made at the time. And this let me kind of give a little bit of a background on that, try to answer some questions, anticipated questions. We right now have the moratorium that's in place until the end of 2018. That's something that we as a city council and the city voted for, which was the appropriate action. We have up until the end of 2019 to enact a ban. The referendum, the ability to put a referendum question on an upcoming election cannot happen now until after December 31st of 2019. So we cannot put this on a ballot until 2020 at the earliest. Now, there's going to be licenses given out, I anticipate, long before we're allowed to put this on a ballot. So the thought was to bring this forward, and I know a number of other cities and towns are doing that. I think most recently Danvers, you may have seen in the paper, is doing this. They have to go to their town government for votes. But we as a city council have that ability to do that. And I think that's the appropriate step to not allow the retail recreational marijuana to be here in this city. Medical is different. We've been tackling that. But the retail recreational, we have control as a city council to make that vote that we don't want that sold at stores here in the city of Peabody. And again, I think the dangerous consequences, I think the devastating consequences that having retail marijuana, recreational marijuana to be able to be sold at any convenience store or any store in the city is just not the direction we want to go as a community. There's a great deal of questions about how the law is going to be upheld and how it's going to be policed by our police department. And I just think strongly that this is the way to go and make that decision as a city council that we're authorized to do. And again, the city, I believe, and it was a few thousand vote difference, supported that action. And I'm here to answer any questions, and certainly as to the legal aspects, Mike Smazinski can certainly address those better than I can.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilors, do you have any questions, comments? Seeing none. Councilor McGinn? Councilor McGinn, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to send to the planning board the draft language received earlier this evening to the planning board for recommendation. So moved.
Okay, councilors on that motion, comments? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors Garabedian.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay, councilors, the other item on the agenda, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mike. The other item on the agenda is item C, and we have a late communication from Attorney Kelty, who is unable to appear tonight. So, councilors, what is your wish on this? Would you rather postpone it to a night that he's available?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Councilors, you heard the motion from Councilor Mitsoulas. All those in favor? Any opposed? It is a vote. Accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned. I don't get to do that too much more.
I know, Tom.
I think when his is on. Oh, goodness.
I know the purple button turns them off. Who's next? Barry? Jesus, we're early. God.
Says I didn't even look. I don't know what's going on, but I don't like it.
Huh? Yeah. Turned off.
Keep shutting it off
Why?
because you keep leaving it on. No, you didn't tell me that. I
I'm
kept seeing it on. You can't do anything. It's like yours is locked. Try shut yours off. No, try shut yours off. No, so now that time we're. Good thing we're getting new
I don't know.
microphones. That's my take.
That's her take. Oops.
Those
Yeah.
were, yeah.
Can I have the councilors take their seats, please? I'd like to call to order the subcommittee on the golf course. Peter McGinn is on the subcommittee, so I'll ask Peter to chair it. Mike, sorry, he's on the committee, so as a voting member. So Peter, if you'd run the meeting so I can speak from my seat till. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I asked for this meeting tonight to address some of the issues we have at our golf course where financially, back in July, we lost $111,000 at the course. And since I know there's been a little improvement in the numbers, but we're still in the hole. And I understand we have a bond, but a bond is part of running any business, and it is a business. So I can't discount the fact that there's a bond. That's part of, you know, how you have to factor in your overhead. So it was really disheartening to me about the loss, because I had been talking about it for about 4 years at least, and there was really been no movement. It's kind of been run the way it's run, and what we get is what we get. If we have good weather, we make a little more money or break even. Even on a good year at $1.5 million, I think we netted $7,700. So it's kind of like, I think there needs to be some changes. And I've been kind of going over numbers, and I think it's more than just how many rounds of golf. I think it's about management. I think it's about operations. It's about management policies, and it has to change, because if we lose $111,000 next year, this is an enterprise zone, it's not coming from the taxpayers, because you'll be in the red next year. And you'll have to cut $111,000 out of your budget. Those are the facts. It's not coming from the taxpayers of Peabody. So, number one, I mean, let's talk about the bond. Okay, and one of the things I looked at was, when I talked to Mike, there's $1,360,000 left on the bond, and we pay, I think Council Gould 2 years in a row at the budget meeting asked, when I went back and watched budget meeting the year before, I kept asking the same question: when is the bond over? Well, it's 3 to 4 years, whatever that is, and we're paying $485,000 a year on the bond. Okay, $485,000. So what I did was I ran some numbers about refinancing that debt out to 10 years. Okay, so if we refinance, Mike, I put it at 4%, $1,360,000 at 4% for 10 years. Our yearly payment on the bond for 10 years would be $165,000 a year, which puts you up $320,000. Now, let's say it's a bad year and you lose 111. You're still up 200 and some odd $1,000 at the end of the year by refinancing it. And also by now on a good year, you're up 320, maybe more. But if we're going to talk about the golf course bringing in $320,000 in excess money, some of that needs to go to the general fund, so the benefits all of Peabody. Part of it has to go to pay back the economic development loan. We have to stop paying that back. And thirdly, you want a driving range over there? Where's the money coming from? That's how you'll have your money. You want to upgrade your kitchen? Because that's a whole nother discussion. That's a whole nother discussion where it's making no money. That has to change. Okay? So with that refinancing, you could have all the things you need to make that put that golf course in a better shape to be profitable, okay? So that's something I think that we'll be discussing and get the mayor's opinion on that. If we have 4 years left on the bond and we refinance it out to 10, at the end of 10 years, if we just left it in a kitty and we broke even, we'd have 3.2 million in cash in 10 years in that fund. But I want part of that, if we do that, to go to the general fund, like I said, and to start paying back the economic development loan and to make improvements at the course. So I looked at what you wanted to do, Peter. Peter, could you come up?
Identify myself. Peter Cronin, the clubhouse manager.
So by refinancing that debt, that's great. It gets us out of a hole, but I still think that some of the management and how it's run and things we do need to change. Because we can bail you out, we can refinance it and get it done, and you guys, but if we don't want to lose money, and I know you don't want to lose money, we want to make money, okay? And part of that I understand is that you don't have much of a food service revenue.
Correct.
Okay, what I saw in there was, it said there was about 46,000 in gross revenue in the what do you call it, the clubhouse? Is that what you call it? The food?
Yes,
46?
in the grill room, yes.
So your expenses were 35 grand. So 11,000 over the course of a year was net. Who runs the food?
We do.
Who's we?
Well, myself, Jean, we have people that work in the counter.
Yeah, I don't know, who is Jean?
Jean Quigley, she's the assistant manager.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know Jean if I walk by her on the street, so I apologize, Jean. So what is Jean's full-time job?
She's the assistant manager up there. She works in the pro shop. We work in the, we basically run the clubhouse together.
Okay, so it's just the two of you. There's
Just
no
the
other
two of us.
part-time people, because I've had...
Oh, no, they're part-time people, but we're the two full-time people there.
Okay, so what I get, a lot of people call me about this issue and ask, you know, if it's not staffed properly and the hours, like, a group of kids were practicing for one of the teams, came off at about 4:30 and the food was closed. 4:30 on a Thursday.
That could be.
Well, there's golfers out on the course. What if somebody comes in and they want a drink and hot dog or whatever? There's none of that? See, that's what I don't understand.
Well, we just go by what we average there, and at this time of the year, when the leagues are gone, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, there is basically, there's no need to staff it. There's no need to. And we're still on the other side, so if there were kids there, we would supply something for them. We'd go over and get them food.
What happened to the grill?
As in the grill and the...
Outside. You used to have a grill there.
The police department took that about 6 years ago.
Because a lot of times on the weekends, people come on the turn, and somebody should be cooking hamburgers and hot dogs to give to the, to buy, so the golfers. I mean, look, I'm not going to get into micromanaging your course, but these are things I've seen on a lot of other courses where I don't understand why that stuff. I don't know why they took your grill. That could be used to bring in income. I don't understand
Well,
that.
that would be another person to man that, though. You'd have someone cooking there, then you'd have someone running the grill room, so then our part-time wages would go up even more.
Okay, so, all right, how much time does Gene spend with the food?
Gene doesn't spend much time at all on the food. At this time of the year, we both do, but during the season, we're very busy at the golf course. So we're not manning the registers. We're out trying to make sure that the people that come up there enjoy themselves.
Well, you need part-time people to stand out there for 3 hours and do some of those things. Like, I'm not going to get up there and twist your arm to do it. If you don't realize there's revenue to be made there, then that's a problem. There's lots of ways. That kitchen needs to be expanded to bring in more revenue. If you're talking in here, talking about a one-day liquor license for events,
I'm not talking about that.
Well, it's in your thing about bringing in, who wrote this?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I haven't seen that paperwork.
Well, please contact anyone if you require any further information. Peter Cronin, Jen Davis, and Mike Inglis.
Well,
You didn't write
I
this.
did not write that.
You don't know anything about the golfing from 11 a.m. to 1:50?
Oh, I know about that.
Counselor, point of information, that memorandum is specifically from Mike Gingrich, Director of Finance.
Okay,
dated-
but I'm assuming Mike has had discussions about a one-day liquor license for tournaments? Mike?
I think that was more Jen Davis trying to.
All right, I get it. So the point is, if we were to consider doing beer and wine for tournaments, not as a bar, part of that, at any golf course, is when those golfers come in, not to feed them alcohol and they leave and go to Champions. There needs to be a tent put up, grills put in place, and you're going to cook steak tips, chicken, to all those stuff that's real basic, and you don't need to expand your kitchen to do that. It just seems like it's golf course 101 that some of this stuff it's not brain surgery. And I'm not going to support a beer and wine license if you're not going to bring in the food, because it goes hand in hand. Any successful golf course that has alcohol has a huge food entity part of this. You agree, disagree?
I agree, but I mean, my opinion on the beer and wine is we've operated for 16 years without one, and we don't need one. So that's, I mean, I don't know why you're directing that to me on that. That's,
Well, you lost $111,000.
Well, that-
And so he's looking at revenue for that. So, look, we could go back and forth all day on this. Mayor, do you have something to jump in here?
Can I jump in, Counselor? Because you're asking some real good questions, and these are some discussions we've had recently. I think I can maybe address some of these issues. So, but the first thing I do want to say is that the golf course is a profitable enterprise for the city. If you look at the bottom line numbers, we're on average between $400,000 to $550,000 in the plus. Now, you're correct in earlier stating that a lot of that has to go to bond money. We have three more bond payments that have to be made. I believe it's $1.3 million that is still owed on that bond. I think that's a good suggestion, Counselor, about looking into refinancing. In fact, one of the discussions we've had recently was because after that bond is paid, there's still some money that's owed to Community Development Authority for the loan that was given. And we were looking to go to the Community Development Authority to see if that could be pushed out over time. So we're going to look into, Mike is going to look into that to see if that's allowed under our current bond order, to see if we can refinance that. Sometimes they do not allow you, depending on the length of the bond. But I think that's a good suggestion, because I agree completely. I want some of that money to go into the general fund. Once that bond is done, or we refinance, I want some of that money to go to improvements that need to be made at the course. And some of those are investments. Like this year they started to do the driving range. And I know that's a priority to kind of have that up and operational this spring, hopefully. So I know there's things that can be done. They're looking at sources of revenue or trying to add sources of revenue to this. But golf is so weather dependent. I mean, a lot of it just going to depend. If we have rainouts on weekends, we lose thousands of dollars. I think if there's a rainout on a Saturday, we lose $8,000. That adds up. And, there's years where it's not a bad winter. We're able to get out earlier, or it's a good fall and we're able to play into November, even into December some years. So a lot of it is just weather dependent. I do think, as I said, your suggestion about refinancing is a good one. That could free up some money because certainly we don't want to be going into our budget to sustain the golf course. But the golf course is a profitable enterprise. There's good people working there. I think change is always needed. In fact, what we were talking about when we met very recently was to maybe, hire, for a few thousand, not a big, not a large contract, but have somebody to come in to review the golf course and make some recommendations as to bring in some additional revenue. I think more can be done for food. I'm not sure if memberships are the way to go, or if just giving some discounted hours, things like that. I do not know what the best way to go is on that. I think maybe an independent person coming in can tell us. I do think that we get past this hurdle the next couple of years, we're going to be looking at $500,000 and saying, okay, what do we want to do? We can help with our schools, we can help with general fund, we can, make some additions to the course. I don't even, I'm not ready to talk about liquor licenses, but I do know that there's further things we can do and changes that need to be made. And I applaud you in particular and others for bringing this up because, I think it needed to be reviewed, and I think the time is over the course of the winter to have an independent evaluator come in for short money and help us, give us some guidance.
Thank you, Mayor. And that was going to be one of my motions. I did talk to a few golf pros, and there's one, I think, benchmarking.com, where they come in. It's short money. I think it's under $5,000, and they come in and they do a complete evaluation and try to guide you on what you can do, what you can't do, what other courses are doing. They're going to look at. They're going to request all your budgets, your overhead, everything that you're doing over there, and kind of get an overview. And look, I'm not saying that the people aren't good people, and Peter does.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
But sometimes a little pressure put on makes you produce, and you can't just say, like Peter said one time, well, I don't know, I just send the bill in. That was kind of disheartening when I hear that, because I want Peter to be forward thinking and come up with creative ways to expand revenues at the golf course. And I just want to mention one thing. We talk about memberships, and junior golf memberships are huge. That promotes youth golf, and as those people get older, they're going to come back, they're going to golf with their families, okay? Now, you talk about Saturday and Sundays, no one wants, it's all preferred tee times and all that, no one wants that. But that's one of the benefits of memberships, and we don't have memberships, so when it rains, we get lumped. But if somebody was to pay their year membership, if it rains every Sunday, so be it. And just to say, two people called me. They went to golf on a Sunday morning recently at the beginning of the Patriots season, and they couldn't get on the course. And I said, what do you mean? It's a Sunday morning. I understand full tee times, that happens. So what they began to tell me was they created a shotgun start, and they put 2 foursomes on a hole, and basically the course was shut down because they wanted to get out before the Patriots game. Now, that's fine when you have memberships. That's what those people expect. And that's been done at other courses. That's nothing new. But when I have somebody say, I couldn't believe it, I went over to Hillview and spent my money there. And that was bothersome to me, because not only that, it's a 5.5-hour round with 8 people on a hole, and you're shutting down a course, and those people aren't members. So that tells me, when I went to the website, there was no mention of shotgun start, because maybe you want to go out and golf. So I'm assuming there's a set few of 30 or 40 guys every Saturday and Sunday that golf that took advantage of this, but the rest of the world didn't know about it. So those are the things. Which, do I think they should be doing it? No. If you had membership, absolutely. It's a promotion. We're going to do the Pats. We'll have the game on in there. You come in, eat, drink, whatever it is. So that was bothersome. So there's things we can do, and a lot of it's in the details. And we're here to help. We're not here to rip you apart. It may seem that way, but we're there to help. And we want that golf course to make money. well, I won't be here next year, so it'll be somebody else to pick up the torch when, I want to hear numbers, that you made it and you put some things into place. So memberships is something that you need to consider. And I think that, families coming out to golf and juniors, that's really, you create longevity and interest in the course with families. And if they can close it on a Sunday morning for a Patriots game for non-members, so they're getting, not people who aren't quote-unquote non-members are getting benefits just like they were members of a course when you shut that down. So I could go on for hours, but I'm not going to. I'm going to open it up to the council. I think you know my opinion. I think refinancing the bond takes all the pressure off, but when you take all the pressure off, I still would like changes. I don't want to see same old, as I think there's a lot of things that can be discussed and worked out to make it better and more profitable for everybody. So I'll leave it at that. Like I said, I could go on for quite a while, but I'll take back the chair and I'll open it up to the rest of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sinowitz. Mr. Mayor, I think you want to make some additional
Sure, are
comments.
you, okay. No, Council Sinowitz, I do think this is a good discussion, and I think a lot of your comments are right on. I think, you know, you have to review the way things are operating to try to make improvements. I do think there's opportunities to enhance revenue, and I do think it would be money well spent this year to hire a consultant over the course of, over the winter, to have to do a review. I'm not a golfer. I'm not sure what the best route to take is, but to bring in somebody to kind of, as an expert, to talk about memberships, to talk about other things that we could be doing to help us, I think would be very valuable. You know, it's a great resource for the city, certainly, and we want to make sure it's successful and doing the right thing. So I think this is a good time for a real, you know, a real review of the operation. We got good people over there that I think want to do the same thing, and I think that now is the time to do that. And as I said, I think your idea on refinancing is a good one.
Whoops. Councilor McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just picking up on that comment that the mayor just made a moment ago, I agree. The golf course is a tremendous amenity for the city. That, in conjunction with the Michael Bonfanti Nature Trail and conservation area that's right adjacent to it, really are gems for the city and add to the quality of life here. And I do think that historically, while I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, that it's always a good idea to evaluate new alternatives and keep an open mind, I do think that given that the course has been very well maintained and financially self-sustaining for 16 years, it does have a pretty sound track record. There's a late communication I'd moved to receive from the Director of Finance.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
So I think we can see from that when you look at the actual fiscal 2017 results, we anticipated that retained earnings were going to be fairly slim during the June budget discussions. However, they took some actions, including, I believe, Councilor Sinowitz, Mr. Chairman, some of the suggestions you made, as well as looking at reducing some cost in staffing costs, and as a result, saw a $50,000 improvement in the actual results. So the retained earnings are actually $50,000 better than were anticipated in the June budget discussions. With respect to refinancing, I think that's something that should be evaluated, but we truly are looking at two more budget cycles where we need to consider the current debt service. So, I mean, we've got fiscal 19 and fiscal 20, and that nearly $500,000 finance cost line item goes to zero at that point. There is that CDA loan that's out there, and that is not insignificant. That's $1.5 million, I believe, but I think the Director of Finance is well aware of that in the planning process, and my understanding is that there's a chance that even under an accelerated payment schedule, that could be a 10-year payback commitment at about $150,000 a year. So that would free up basically $350, round numbers, basically $350,000 a year, 2 fiscal years out for improvements to the golf course, and as the mayor said, potentially other uses. So I think that although there may have been a perception that there was some type of dire circumstances there, I don't see it that way at all. I think that the golf course is financially stable, and the future looks pretty bright from from a financial standpoint. And as the Director of Finance, the schedule that he provided to us this evening shows, the operating revenues have been very, very consistent, but I think could benefit, Mr. Chairman, from some of the suggestions that you've made, as well as other councilors have made. I know they have made some adjustments to the fees. I believe they've introduced some online discounts during some slow times, and as a result of that, have seen an increase in play, and have seen some new players show up. So that's a positive result from that change. I've been told they're evaluating the discount pass option, and I think important to everybody here that's looking for that place to be run like a business, they've taken steps to contain costs, so they've taken some belt tightening measures. The one thing that was in the memo that I want to address is with respect to liquor licenses. We heard Mr. Cronin say that he's not interested in pursuing that. We heard the mayor say that he's not ready to pursue that at this point. We heard Mr. Gingrich say that wasn't an idea that he put forward necessarily. I just want to state unequivocally that that is one recommendation that I will not support. Any use of that nature is not permitted in an R1 zoning district, and that golf course is situated 100% in an R1 zoning district. And even if that use were allowed, as we saw in that memo from the Director of Finance, there's really no reason to anticipate there'd be any great financial windfall. They went out and looked at other courses that are doing alcohol sales, and the payback to the course was not orders of magnitude beyond what, or anywhere near what I think some might have expected. I also think that puts the city in competition with some of the area establishments that seek to attract patrons after a round of golf. And most importantly, in 1997, the residents were assured that there'd be no liquor licenses on the premises at any time. Okay, I've been contacted by a large number, frankly, of area residents in recent months, a few of whom are here this evening, and without exception, they maintain a strong belief that this is a restriction that should continue. I'm going to support them and oppose any attempts to reverse a commitment that was made to this neighborhood a long time ago. So I just want to make sure that my feelings on that matter are clearly understood. But again, Mr. Chairman, other suggestions that you have made with respect to potentially enhancing revenues in other ways I think should be explored, including the possibility of refinancing, and I appreciate the thought that you've clearly put into this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other councils? Council Gravel?
Thank you.
I'm not on the committee.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not on the committee, you're right. Mr. Chairman, I agree with you 100% about junior membership. I've been talking about that for the last, since I've been on the council. It was the way I got to play the game of golf, and it does, as you said, does become a great feeder system for the course itself. If you grow up playing there, you have an affinity towards it, and you'll continue to play as an adult. I think, as Councilor McGinn said, it's a great amenity for the city. It's a quality of life issue. We have a golf course in our city that not many municipalities have, and I'm proud to say that we have a well-run golf course. I do agree with the councilor that we can do some work on food. you know, the issue would be Peter and Jean, who do a great job. Peter and Jean have to let that go, and we need to look at hiring someone that will handle the food end of things. Maybe the mayor can look at that, and Mike, in their next budget for the golf course. I do agree with Councilor McGinn on the alcohol. We made a commitment to those folks and those neighbors that we wouldn't have alcohol, and I believe we have to stand by it. If I could ask Pete, what's a round cost with a cart on a Sunday morning, please?
We have two rates. One resident, it's 61 with a golf cart. Non-resident is 67.
So I did hear the same thing Councilor Sinowitz talked about, the shotgun start on Sundays so you can incorporate the Patriots game. So we have 144 players
No, we don't.
on? I thought
We don't max it out
we
two
don't,
on every
okay.
hole.
So what do we average for?
We average about 118 players.
Okay, 118 times 60?
Well, yeah, but 16 of them are 9-holers.
Okay,
Yep,
so 100
right,
times 60 is $6,000
right.
on a Sunday morning in the fall. I think in spite of others not being able to play, as you said, Councilor, still it's bringing in $6,000 that we would not get. We probably wouldn't get 100 players for a 5-hour period. Well, we may, but still, we're getting $6,000 as revenue. So
We open up afterwards at 12:30. We open the tee, right?
right.
We do probably another 1,500 after that.
okay. Okay, thank you, Peter.
Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Counselor Gravel?
Yeah, I was just going to point out that, you know, having, I think part of the problem is, part of the confusion is that you got a profit and loss statement, and we're showing a debt service principal payment, which is usually a balance sheet transaction, you know, because you're taking your cash and you're using it to pay down your principal. The only thing that really belongs down there is the interest income, or the interest expense. So I mean, if you look at it that way and you say that your gross profit line is really like your earning before interest and taxes, it is a profitable operation. But I think that plays well to some of what Councilor Sinowitz was pointing out, because to add services like a grill or to improve the kitchen, which was pointed out would require more labor, might shift that profitability from 30% to 20%. Still be a very profitable operation, and it would have a top-line effect at the same time. So I mean, I think it would be a little short-sighted to discount all of that suggestion based on the idea that, you know, we're working with a cash flow problem that resulted from some inability to pay down the debt. And while the idea of refinancing that debt over a 10-year period is a good one, you know, there seems to be one that you could even explore. I don't know on a, you know, legality point of view how it could be done, but from, you know, our reserves earn roughly a point and a half, and so the same impact could be had, even greater than borrowing at 4%, would be to reduce the debt, which is at a 4.5%, I believe, rate currently, and offset it with cash that's earning 1%. It'd be a roughly 3% gain on the investment, and then the golf course could be charged with paying back the reduction in the reserve from its earnings at a lower rate, and the savings, you'd get the same effect. Your savings would be there, but your cash flow loss, your cash flow issue would be gone, and you'd put yourself back on an even footing. So it's another way to consider it, because, you know, if money was earning 8% in an investment out of the reserve, that'd be one thing, but it isn't. So this is something that we might consider. Again, you'd have to look at some of any municipal constraints with enterprise funds and such, but it just seems to me like that'd be the quickest pickup, and it would achieve what you're looking to achieve. It would allow them to look at then the annual operating income, which is what they're showing at the $420,000 line, as reinvestable. One portion, you know, you could set up the same type of a schedule. Instead of being a debt schedule, it would just be a repayment schedule, so it'd be like an interest-free loan from the city, or at least charge back the debt service at the same rate that the earnings are. So there's really no loss for the city. You know, it's just taking money out of the reserve and putting it back. So just something to consider.
No, that's a great point. In my motion, I will, when I request to looking into the refinancing, I will also have the finance director look to which is way. I don't know what those limitations are on the enterprise zone, so no, very good point. Thank you, Councilor Gravel. Councilor Garabedian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess I'm on the same page as Councilor Gravel with the so-called bailout of the golf course, as how much profit do we really want that golf course to make? It's making a small profit now, whether it's making $20,000 a month. Are we staffed properly? Are we advertising? Are we comparing ourselves to the local golf courses? Not ones 100 miles away, but local ones that may be taking business from us, like you mentioned that golf course there. The other thing is, I think, as somebody mentioned, 16 years. I remember voting on this when we were building the Carroll School and where we were going to spend the money. You remember, Demo, I think. I know Peter very well. My father worked at that golf course part-time, and Peter's a great guy. He took care of my father. And that was like his favorite place to work. But I can tell you this, you get a company in there to oversee it, look at it for a month or so, point out the good, point out the bad, and you'll probably realize that you're not going to have to put in a lot of money to get this to go. A few changes here and there, tweaks, see if we're advertising properly, we're going in the right area. Some people that work in these companies need to be paid on base commissions, getting people in, getting customers in the door, you know? I mean, when you're just getting a flat salary and nothing matters if the roof is falling down, that's how people got to get paid sometimes. I'm not saying you could pay for everybody, but I'm saying people that are bringing people in, hey, you get paid on the bottom line sometimes. It works, and it gives them a little bit more energy, and you know what? It gives them more money at the end of the line. But there's so many things that can happen that, since it's like profitable somewhat, to make it a lot more profitable without maybe having to put up a few $1 million. But since it's almost over anyway, what do you got, 2 more cycles? Is that what we're saying? 2, yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of good, a lot of positive in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Garabedian. In some courses, the food service director gets a salary and then will get a commission based on the events or functions they bring in, a percentage of the sales on that. But I don't think that location is going to be doing lots of functions and events. But I have a couple of motions. I'm going to make them, and if Councilor Charist.
Thank you. I'm not a golfer, and you probably wouldn't want me on your golf course because that'd be ridiculous. But I do know a lot of the golfers, and my neighbors and my friends are all golfers. And one thing they do tell me is what an enjoyable time they have at that golf course, and what wonderful people there are working at that golf course that makes them come back time after time, because they don't get the same treatment at other places where maybe they are more profitable. But one thing this business does have that most businesses want is a repeat customer, and the customer who walks out enjoying their time and enjoying that, their money being spent and being treated respectfully and not just rushed through the door. So that's what I hear. Now, I'm not going to talk about the money. Has been talked about by people who have more information about it. But what I will talk about is the respect and enjoyment the people from this city gets by going to that golf course. You people do a wonderful job. My family and friends enjoy being there. Keep it up. Thank you.
Councilor Mitsoulas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everybody brought up some good suggestions, and I think Peter will take it to heart and do the best he can to make this what it already is, more successful. Listen, the golf course to me is like Brooksby Farm. It's a jewel. I remember in '97 I was on this council. I remember in '92 I was on this council when Bob McGuire made the first motion to turn the lime pits where the golf course is right now into a golf course. And everybody at the time said that could not be done because the lime pits from Eastman Gelatin were in that location. Through the leadership of Peter Turgeon and the persistence of Bob McGuire, this got done, and to surprise of a lot of people. And I look out in the audience right here, and I remember being at these meetings where we discussed issue after issue after issue, and I'm seeing the same people out there that I saw back here in '97. Am I correct? Okay, yeah. Well, anyways, one of the things I remember, and this is the only reason I'm speaking up, because people constantly saying, why don't they serve alcohol down at the golf course? Well, listen, the reason it got passed is because there was to be no liquor at the golf course. And if that was to be the main issue, you would not have a golf course today. I voted against it then, and I can't look at you right now and say, hey, look, times have changed. They haven't. You people are still here, and that's the word we gave you. So that was my word. So as long as I'm on the council, you will have my vote in that, on the alcohol part of it. So, no, listen, I wasn't looking for that, but I'll take it. But anyways, no, but I go back knowing that you can't break your promise, because if we break our promise to you, we're going to have to break a lot more promises. So that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments from the council? I'll just finish up with a couple of comments, and then I'd like to make some motions if Councilor McGinn could move them on the floor for me, rather than jumping back. So, look, I think there's some good discussions, and at the end of the day, we all want this course to be profitable. But I just want to say, the bond is part of your overhead. And if you want to separate out the bond and say you're profitable, you can do that. But when you add in the bond, you're not profitable. And I don't want to wait 2 years and bleed 2 years if we have a lot of rain and lose more money. So that's why I suggested refinancing it. I don't want to wait 2 more cycles, and God forbid, we have another summer like we did, with a ton of rain, and then we'll be really hurting over there. So that's why I made that suggestion, and I don't want to wait 2 years, and I think that we could be very creative with the money. Some into the general fund, do your upgrades that you want to do over there, start paying back that economic development loan. So, and that's all. I'll finish with that. So I have 2 motions. The first motions, I would ask that the Mayor Betancourt look into a company that would come in and evaluate our golf course, look at the operations, the budgets, and strategies to improve our revenues at the course. Councilor McGinn?
So moved.
On the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Second, I would ask that the finance director look into refinancing the bond to 10 years, $1.36 million over 10 years,
and give us a, I thought my numbers were accurate, but give us, you know, some spreadsheets showing that savings. Also, I would request that Councilor Gravel's suggestion about the city paying back that debt, the feasibility of doing that, which would basically do the same thing, and whether that enterprise zone, we can do that. Is that clear, Mike?
So moved.
On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. I thank my fellow councilors, and I thank Peter, thank you for coming up there. I appreciate it. All right. Thank you.
Move to adjourn?
So moved.
Good evening, folks. If we could get to our next subcommittee meeting on public safety. Councilors Charist, Gravel, Mitsoulas, and Sinowitz, if you could join, and any other councilors that would like to join. We're scheduled for 7. Yes, you are. Okay. Good evening, folks. Tonight we have a Public Services Committee meeting with 3 items on the agenda. Item A is discussion regarding the progress of the Coolidge Ave water treatment plant and repairs. B would be issues of bringing city sewage to Barm Ave. And C was a motion referred to subcommittee by Councilor Turco, who is not on the committee, but under suspension of the rules, I'll ask that my colleagues don't mind that he handles that one, in which it is to request Public Services Department and the Finance Director to update the City Council on our water usage through MWRA, specifically regarding the difference in cost between last year and this year. So those are the 3 items. And we have the mayor with us this evening. And thank you, Mayor. And I see the Facilities Director, Tim Healy. I see David Terenzoni, the Director of Public Services. I saw him. Yes, great. And I saw, did I see someone for the fire? Yep, the fire department is here, Chris Dowling. So with that, I'll open it up to the mayor so you could update us on what's going on at the water treatment.
Great, thank you, Chairman. We do also have Dan Doucette, who's been intimately involved in this as our purchasing agent, and also Leah Stanton. She is our water consultant from Weston and Sampson. So she'll be able to answer some of the technical questions as well. Here to answer any and all questions. This has certainly been a very difficult issue since the fire. It's had its impact on our city in many ways. Right now, as you all know, we are 100% reliant on MWRA water as opposed to what we were doing when we had the Coolidge operation in full swing. We were taking about 70% of the Coolidge water treatment plant was from our water, and we were supplementing approximately 30% with MWRA water. And certainly our numbers have gone up significantly as we're reliant on MWRA. For the water, they have come in at a significantly higher cost. I think you have some of those numbers now. If not, I think Mike Gingras will be providing some of that to you shortly. And obviously, it's to our benefit to, as quickly as we can, get our Coolidge water treatment plant back up and operational so that we can end the reliance on MWRA water. We were able to get some waivers. We were not successful in getting others. And I think Dan Doucette and Leah Stanton can speak to that. As to some of the aspects of the project, Tim Healy and Dave Terranzoni, I think, would best be able to answer specifics about the building, the work that was done, the damage that was done from the fire, and the long-range plan. So I just wanted to open up with those few comments and then turn it over to the people that can speak about the project. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. If we could start with the fire inspector, Chris Dowling. Let's start from the beginning. So if you could tell us what happened, and thank you for coming. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. I'm Lieutenant Chris Dowling from the Fire Department.
If you could tell us, I mean, what we know is we've read in the paper there were birds or something, or gnawed through some wires, or animals. If you could tell us what happened.
We were able to determine the origin, which is the location of the fire, and we determined it as an accidental fire. There was a heat source near the roof, and we found birds nesting at a similar type of lighting unit next to it, and we did see that they were trying to prevent birds from nesting in that area. So we know that the first material that ignited was the nesting material, which is it's easy for that to ignite. It's just straw, as you know. And so we believe the heat source was some sort of resistance heating in the wiring to that lighting unit, and it was on a timer, and the timing of the lights activating and the timeline of the ignition, it matched that's what started it. We don't know exactly what caused the failure in the electrical line, so that's what we determined.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for the lieutenant? No, and it's not on a watch or anything now, right?
No.
Okay.
That's all set.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I think maybe Mr. Healy? As the facilities director, would you like to bring us up to speed what's going on?
Sure. My involvement in the project has been the structural part of the project. Due to the extensive structural damage to the building, I was heavily involved until we were able to get the building safe and secure and back up to where people could enter the building and start doing some other work. So I've been monitoring the project throughout the summer, and we were able to wrap up the structural part of it right about the end of July. I have a specific date, but it was right near the end of July. We were able to secure the building and get all the staging in the building, out of the building, and it was then safe for people to go in. So right now the building is structurally sound. Everything's been replaced that was found damaged. We replaced 2 major trusses in the building and a good section of the sheathing of the building, the roof sheathing, and the other parts of the roof structure. It's a wood frame building, so all the reconstruction was done in wood, and we had to match the existing. So there was some pretty unique things about the building, quite frankly. There was I think Lieutenant Dowling could attest to it, that one of the reasons it was difficult to fight the fire is the sheathing was, the roof decking was 1.5 inches thick. It's tongue and groove 2x6 material. And then on top of that was a plywood sheathing, and then it was the roofing material. So it was a pretty substantial roof, and there was a lot of structure there, and hence there was a lot of damage. Probably more than we originally thought, and when we discovered some additional damage as we got into it. So that's where it stands right now. The building is ready, you know, it's weather tight, and it's, and other work is going on inside the building that I'm sure Dave can speak about.
Thank you. Do any councilors have any questions for Mr. Healy? Council Turco.
Thank you. Tim, what's the time frame for completion?
You mean is completion of the rest of the project?
Right.
To be honest with you, I'd really rather defer to Dave and Leah on that. They've been working on that more than I have. I've been just working basically on the structural part of it. So we're done with the structural part of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other councilors? I've got a question. Would you have been involved in the process of requesting the waivers from DCAM?
Yes, I was. You know, we did it through Dan Doucette's office, but we, you know, initially we talked about it, what was the purpose of the waiver, and the various waivers that we requested, the 2 waivers we requested. So the first waiver was qualified under the emergency qualification under the state regs, which allowed us to make the building secure and safe. So we were able to avoid probably 2 to 3 months worth of process by getting that waiver. And that was very important for us to even be at this point. We'd still be doing the roof right now if we didn't get that waiver. So that I was yeah, definitely involved in that. Dan did the heavy lifting with the state people, but I was involved in that process.
Sure. So with your experience with DCAM, it's much more extensive than mine, but I do have a bit. So when you applied for the first waiver, that was under an emergency circumstance. So once you applied for that waiver, hoping that, you know, you have no roof, it's an emergency, it definitely was an emergency, that one was looked like a slam dunk, that you would get that one, and you did get that one.
Correct.
But then you put in for another one where it's not under an emergency?
Correct.
Because once you fix the roof, when underneath, DCAM's not going to consider that an emergency. They're not going to consider the equipment to be, you know, to have you void the bid process. So what was your line of thinking to recommend that we go for an additional waiver instead of starting the bid process simultaneously as requesting the first waiver?
Well, first of all, the first waiver was a slam dunk in regards to that, because under the regs, it pretty much met the definition of an emergency. But once the building is safe and secure, DCAM doesn't consider it an emergency anymore. They don't really care about your schedule or your financial issues. They just say, now, okay, follow the law. Although they did give us, I think as Dan will explain, kind of a half of a waiver, in the sense that they let us order long lead items, and so we could be ahead of the schedule there. But as far as the construction, they required us to bid it. But we could not have done the work simultaneously, because we couldn't let people into the building to evaluate the building. The building wasn't safe for people to be in there, except for the construction workers who are really working outside the building. So the people couldn't actually go in and assess the other issues in the building until we got it secure and safe. So
and how long did that take?
It took to just about the end of July to get it to where we were removing staging in the building. As I think it was on July 19th, I believe, was the day we were removing the staging that was inside the building. We had to stage the complete inside of the building in order to do the work. And then we were working off lifts, and there was a crane on site for a period of time. So you couldn't do the work simultaneously, because you couldn't go in and assess all the things you needed to assess while the building was in that condition. It really was not a safe building.
Okay, so in your assessment, us not getting the second waiver, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you saying that it really didn't put us back any further than we are right now?
Pretty much.
Given that it's $250,000 a month that
Pretty
we're
much.
paying in
I would say pretty
water.
much that it gave us, it probably would have saved a little bit of time if they granted the full waiver, but it wouldn't have granted all because we couldn't get anybody in there working while this was going on. So the period of time is when developing the plans and specs and going out to bid. That's kind of like the time that's added into the process. But other than that, there was no, you're right, we're pretty much where we should be on the schedule.
And I'm glad that you're here, and just so that folks know that I had requested this meeting with your presence, but just getting people all together for this was difficult, so we had to postpone it. But I did ask for it about 2 months ago. So when information was released in the paper before this meeting, I got a lot of calls from constituents that when it read in the paper, it came across like we dropped the ball and we shouldn't have put in that waiver. So I'm glad that you're here to specifically address that, because a lot of people are, the second waiver, I'm getting curious looks. The second waiver that we did not get is what I'm talking about. So the way it read in the paper was a concern for many constituents because they feel that that put us back and got us further behind the 8 ball with a very expensive water rate running per month. So I'm glad you're here to explain that, and that is why I wanted to have all the players at the table and have the council be up to speed and on board with this huge project because it's costing us so much money with water. So I'm glad that you're here to clear that up.
Got it.
Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Tim, you said that the building structurally is done from the facility side of things. What about the beautiful windows? Did we replace all windows?
None of the exterior structural work has been done. That'll be part of another phase of the construction. First of all, the windows are damaged, and we were, that wasn't part of the emergency. We could secure the windows and keep them, secure, so that wasn't part of it. Plus, there was other subsequent work that needs to get done that may affect those windows.
Thank you, Councilor Gould. Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Through you to Mr. Healy. First of all, I was under the impression that there were 3 waivers requested. You're saying there were only 2?
Correct, only 2.
Okay, so the first one, from what I understand from your comments tonight, was strictly for the structural piece of the building, not for any office build-out.
Correct, just for the structure.
Okay. The second waiver that was submitted was for the equipment, is that correct?
Yes, it was for equipment and a request to continue on construction and putting us back online, which essentially was denied. They allowed the long lead items to be purchased in advance, but they essentially said, go out to bid now that you've secured the building. You have to go out to bid and do the regular process. Yeah, go right ahead.
I think some of that is my mistake, because I did explain there was 3 waivers, but really, the first waiver was for emergency purposes, to try to get in and make it structurally sound. The second waiver was really a combination, or really was a request to move around the bidding requirements. They would not allow us to do that. However, they did allow us to order the long lead items. So I kind of explained it, I think, to you in the past as 3 waivers. Really, it was 2. That was kind of, the second waiver was chopped into 2 pieces. They gave us the long lead items, but they did not give us the full waiver of public bidding requirements.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I appreciate that, but I guess I'm a little troubled with the request. It seems to me, and the mayor and I have had this conversation, it seems to me that the office build-out, you can't operate the plant if the building is not operational. So it seems to me that would have been part of an emergency. And I'm having a little bit of a hard time understanding maybe how it was requested. And I think it would be helpful for us if we could actually see the waiver requests that were submitted, just for our own edification. But it just, I'm a little troubled by it, that there just seems to be something missing here.
I think to be honest with you, I don't want to throw under the bus, but I think Leah could explain that better, that we are going to be able to get it operational without doing the complete outfit of the building. And that's the plan, so we could get it operational prior to that, because this construction is really 3 phases of construction. One is the structural, the second phase is what we're going to be doing next, and the third phase is going to be completing the interior of the plant. But we wanted to get the plant online and not get bogged down in all the details of the interior of the plant in order to get the process moving quicker. So there's really there's going to be 3 phases of construction here, and they will overlap. So try to save as much time as possible. But the plan, it's my understanding, is we're going to, be operational in a temporary fashion, but we can at least get the plant operational.
Okay, through you. I think that's great, and I think, it's imperative that we get this facility back online as quickly as we can. But I was left with the impression a couple weeks ago, much as Chairwoman was, when I, saw some of the articles that were written, was that there were 3, and I understand a little bit of confusion there. But I'm questioning what exactly we requested for waivers.
We could, with the documents, I have a copy in my file. I could provide you with it. If you'd like me to make copies, I'll give it to you.
No, I would like to see them because, there's been there's a little bit of an impression that, we're behind several months and that it's $250,000 a month that we are now on the hook for, that had the state allowed a waiver, that wouldn't have happened.
Sure, and we'll give you I thought you already had these copies. Very simply, the first waiver, as we stated, was for the emergency. Second waiver was dated May 11th, and it was sent, and I'll read just the paragraph that specifically, I think, pertains to your question. Since our previous communication, which was the first waiver, work continues on the building roof and structural elements, which has allowed us to better scope out necessary work so the plant will again supply water users in the city of Peabody. This request for a waiver pertains to allowing the city to expeditiously rebuild water treatment systems in the building that were destroyed and taken out of service due to the fire. What we're asking for, and further, there's some additional information, we were asking straight out to waive all public bidding requirements. They said no. They said your financial situation as a city is not an emergency situation in our eyes. However, they granted us the waiver to order some of those long lead items that can take 6 to 9 months to order. To try to fit in our schedule, they allowed us to order those specific items, but they would not allow us to move forward with completely moving around the public bidding requirements. Once we got in the building, once it was structurally sound and we could get Weston and Sampson and everybody in to really do the examination of the building to find out what has to be fixed, that didn't happen till over the summer. Dan then, with Weston and Sampson's assistance, had to put together the plans and the specifications to put out for bid. That was put out for bid at the end of August, the beginning of September. The bids close on October 4th. So we'll be able to hire a general contractor. So far, we've been very pleased with the numbers of people that are interested, as well as for the sub-bids. So really, in terms of timing, to make the building structurally sound, we went from the fire till the end of July. Then we could do the assessment within the interior of the building to find out what had to be fixed and what was necessary for us in terms of putting the specifications and the plans together so that it could be ordered and put on the documents that we needed to have the contractors come and bid. That went out at the end of August. We really pushed to get that done very quickly during that summer, once we could get people in. That took place within a few weeks. Then we put it out for bid, and now we're waiting for the bid results and bid opening on October 4th. So yeah, I think there was some confusion, but there was, I really feel comfortable saying it because there's nobody, we all wanted it, but nobody more than me wanted to get off MWRA water because it's $250,000 a month. We do have some insurance coverage for a piece of it, but a large part of that is going to be on us. That bill won't come until March, April. We will not know what the final bill will be until March, April, and then we get our bill from the MWRA. But I just wanted to make sure that was kind of the time frame. We couldn't get into the building until July. We got into the building for the month of August, did everything we had to do, put the bids out at the beginning of September, end of August, beginning of September. We had to wait the 30 days that needed to be out, and that's when we're opening up October 4th.
Okay, so just final thing. So what I'm hearing is that we are not behind schedule and that this was the the continuum that was going to occur from the day of the fire.
I'm gonna, and I, you know, Leah Stanton was ready from Weston Sampson to say this. I asked her that very question, and she said, if you want to do things illegally, yes, you can move faster. But we have to follow the public bidding requirements. And again, they did, the DCAM did not allow our request on financial emergency. They did not deem that worthy of a waiver.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And if I may, to your point, Council Walsh, I think you and I are on the same page. I think a lot of the confusion is that our effort as a council was to work hand in hand and be advised, and this subcommittee meeting was requested to be, and it was scheduled 2 months ago, but again, it was postponed a couple times. And in the interim, information was released to the paper, to our constituents, that we read in the paper, so we all have the same information, and now we're kind of doing this backwards, so now we're backing into trying to figure out where we're at, and unfortunately, that wasn't the plan to get the information that way, but you know, that's how it happened this time. But we are having the meeting, and it's probably best that we air it and ask all these questions so that folks at home don't feel, I mean, they're very angry when they read that, as you know, very angry when they read that article in the paper because they feel that we didn't do things appropriately or fast enough. And I really wanted to bring everybody along to show that we were doing things the right way. And maybe moving forward, we can work with the council in that fashion so that we can all work together and keep an eye on the tax dollars and the construction and make sure that we get everything up and running legally and as efficiently as possible. So,
great. Well said, Mr. Chairman. Well said.
thank you. And Leah, would you like to advise us on your expertise that the gentlemen are quite impressed with?
Hello. So we did unhinge the plant, putting it back together, right? There were some issues at the plant that we wanted to have fixed. There were, as part of this whole process. And basically, and there were some betterment discussions. We're wrangling with what's covered with insurance, by insurance, what's not covered by insurance. Since the plant was built, there's new water quality regulations that it's struggling to comply with. So it kind of gave us an opportunity to fix some of the things at the plant that were plaguing us. So, and all of those things take time. So, which we realized that you didn't have. So what we did is we basically took everything that, and I should say that a design which would be putting plans and specifications together to go out for a public bid would generally take, I would say, best case 8 months, closer to 12 months to put it all together. So we took out all of the things that are going to take us time to figure out, and we basically put everything in this first bid package to get the plant making water again. And that does not include the administrative space or the control room or the lab. So what we have done is there is a trailer on the site, and it has been equipped for a lab. It will have desks and a control room in it, and the operators are currently working out of that right now, and they will be running the plant out of the trailer. So bids open next week, where we are optimistic that we're going to get a contractor that's going to be able to mobilize pretty quickly. We have, because we pre-ordered equipment, which is showing up literally next month. The contractor, you're going to have a contractor on board. He's going to have equipment on site, and he's going to be able to put the plant back together making water. It is a lot of work. It is almost an entire gut job for all the electrical. All the treatment units are getting overhauled, and it's an entire upgrade on the controls. That everything is being replaced. So, and unfortunately, if we're going to make water, we need to do it all. So it's 4 months construction from when you execute a contract with the contractor. There is a liquidated damages clause in there. So we're thinking sometime in February that plant is going to get started up and it's going to start making water. So, and then in the meantime, we're figuring out what we need to do for future water quality regulations. We're figuring out what we need the lab to look like in the control rooms, and we're working through some space issues with public services. And that contract and that bid will lag the bid that's opening next week. So it'll be done, it'll be put back in phases. First phase is definitely making water. Second phase is kind of fixing up some of the issues at the plant.
Thank you, Ms. Stanton. Does Council Walsh have questions?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a couple quick questions. First, it's rather ironic that we'd be discussing liquidated damages with the Water Department, but I just wanted to, come on, work with me. Just wanted to check on one of the things you were talking about, having the plant up to date with state-of-the-art equipment or whatever the regulations require today. And I just want to make sure that we are covered for that with our insurance, or are there going to be additional costs for new equipment?
So the policy reads that they need to restore the plant to the code as of the day of the fire, which was March 15th. So, of course, there's $1 million cap on that policy for the code improvements. So right now, we're planning for all of those upgrades to be done and paid for by the insurance company. So, you know, I think this is going to be a little bit of a ongoing story, and I think you know, hopefully the bids come in well and things, you know, and it's totally smooth. But
Okay.
does that answer your question?
Almost. So let's say we're buying whatever you have to buy, and if it costs $110,000, but because of the new equipment, it's an additional 10. It would have been 100. Now it's 110. Just as an example. Is that 10,000 what we're talking about towards $1 million, or is it the whole 110,000 towards the new piece of equipment?
They pay for the whole piece of equipment. They pay for the $110,000. They're paying for up to code. Am I doing all right?
Yeah, maybe I didn't ask it correctly. Basically, what I'm looking at, if we were going to put the plant back whole, if we were going to make them whole like it was March 14th,
yep,
with whatever equipment, and whatever that replacement cost was fine. But that $1 million that we have $1 million for new equipment. Is that $1 million the delta between what it would have cost for the equipment that's there on the 14th or the new equipment?
So let me answer it by saying sprinklers is one of the issues that we're talking about. So if we can prove that sprinklers are required at the plant by code, then we get the insurance company to pay for it. If we can't by code, and it's a little bit of a gray area, then the city pays for it. So does that help?
It does. So basically, we should anticipate that above and beyond the insurance payout, that there are going to be costs that this city is going to have to absorb.
Yes, and I should also tell you that there are already pieces of it, right? So there are some improvements that we're doing that aren't caused by the fire, but we just need to do them because it makes sense. The plant's been offline. Let's get this thing ready to make water for the next 50, you know, at least 20 years. So we are keeping track of those improvements. Mike, we're all working together on them, and we're trying to keep them as minimal as possible. And but there will be extra costs that the city will need to bear above and beyond the insurance.
Okay, thank you. And just lastly, thank you. Do you have any idea, do you have an estimate on what that will be in the final?
Yes, I can tell you that the insurance company thinks that we're looking at about $3.3 million in improvements to get the plant back making water. So right now, that's as good a number as anything, and it changes depending on what, you know, we're going to need to come back, and we're going to need to come back and talk about things like a generator, right? That plant doesn't have a generator, and it might be something that the city might want to consider that the insurance company isn't going to pay for. So we're going to be working those kinds of things through, and it's not going to get put into the final bid package unless everyone agrees that we need to do it.
Thank you.
Counsel Sinowitz.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Through you to Ms. Stanton. What the process in ordering whatever those are, pumps, filtration units, how long did that take to order those? And what's the lead time to get that equipment here?
So the standard answer to that question is 12 to 14 weeks. So long lead time equipment in this industry is 12 to 14 weeks best. And that's from issuing a purchase order. Yeah.
So you're talking 4 months. So if we had the equipment here 2 months ago, would it have made a difference?
No, because you wouldn't have had anyone to install it.
You still would have had, could that at that point have been, let's say they could have turned that equipment out in a month and we had it here, would there have been a way to expedite that construction of the install? We already did the structural to make the roof repairs to make it safe. Now you got to go in and install the new electrical, the new system. So my question is, if we could have expedited it quicker, could we have, and the reason what I'm getting at is, if it's costing us $250,000 a month in water charges, if there was any way that company could have expedited that above and beyond, was it saving us $250,000 a month? And if they say no, can you do it for an extra $50,000? No. Can you do it for an extra $100,000? Can you do it for an extra $200,000? Because if it's costing us $250,000 a month, I want that equipment here as soon as I can get it and get that expedited so we can have it installed. And that's just a question. Would it have made a difference if we got it here and we would ever say, here, here's an extra $250,000. I need it here because that's going to save us $750,000 if we get it installed right away. And that's just that's the first thing that came to mind. I thought, why didn't we expedite this? But now I'm hearing that you didn't have a contract to install it, which I don't know how long that takes by, what the law is and saying out for bid. So that's just a comment. That's what I would have, if it was my personal thing, and I would have said, whatever you need to get it in to save me down the line. But so would it have made a difference?
I don't believe it would have made a difference. So your public funds, you have to comply with Massachusetts procurement laws. If you're spending more than $50,000, $100,000, that kicks you into an entire, it's a bid process. So at minimum, the bid process is 4 weeks. So, and if you're going to award to a general contractor a $2 million construction project, you probably need to have good plans and specifications for them to bid on, because otherwise it puts you in a potentially bad spot with a contractor. So as soon as you got the waiver for the equipment, you relieved the equipment time schedule. You were still on the labor time schedule, which was set by DCAM. So as soon as you didn't get the full waiver for the full bid, it stuck you on this schedule.
Because it could have been, if we had gotten the waiver to do the construction at the same time, that might have saved us months, hundreds of thousands, $500,000 maybe, if we could have expedited the equipment.
So look, we live in Massachusetts. It's electricians, it's filed sub-bidders, it's unions, it's reality for this type of work, unfortunately.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Ms. Stanton, if I could, regarding insurance, in your experience, would have adequate business interruption insurance? Have you ever been in a situation such as this where that insurance was in place and worked?
The city's policy has that. I'm pretty sure it has a business
Interruption?
Yeah, I think it's $1
Service?
million.
And the cap is $1 million?
Yep. And we're using it. We're using it for the MWRA water. We're using it for the trailer, so.
I guess maybe that's a question for the mayor. Can we increase that, or should we have increased that, or should the insurance agent, should the insurance agent have told us to increase more with the age of that building?
We have $1 million other expense part of the insurance coverage for the city. And in light of this incident, and this is something he explained to me that hasn't really come up, they're proposing that we could go to 2 million. But other than that, they've never encountered this before, our insurance people.
And how long have we had them? Like 30 years?
No, but probably 10 at least.
Maybe it's time we go back out to bid. They didn't make that recommendation that we increase our to 2 million. But I guess that's maybe a motion I'll make and send to finance. Councilor Turco.
Thank you. I just had one question for Ms. Stanton, correct? It's Mrs. Stanton?
Yep. Thanks.
When the plant is back online, and obviously it'd be much more energy efficient, will our reliance on MWRA be less than it has been in the past? And will it be a major significant cost savings to the city as opposed to years past? I don't know if you've looked at that.
Yeah, so it will, right? So the plant actually was 20 years old, and as we started, you know, one of the big pieces of it are the filters. So as we started unraveling the filters, we saw some problems in there that are going to get fixed. So it should improve production on the plant. It should reduce the, you know, yes, it's going to improve efficiencies in making water. So the other piece of the MWRA is your water quality issues, and which we are going to also try to address as part of that second phase, this final phase. But there are going to be some costs associated with that, which we're going to need to talk about when we get there, if that makes sense. You know, so some of the treatment costs improvements could be significant. So, right, MWRA water's very good quality, so honestly, we're using it to kind of blend out some of the water quality issues that we have. So that doesn't go away unless we make better water at Coolidge, which may require some additional improvements.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I just realized I skipped right over you, Councilor Gravel.
It's okay. I've been enthralled by the conversation, so. I just heard a lot of numbers tonight, so I just want to confirm in my head what I heard. So we're going to start making water in February? That's the target, correct?
That's the target.
90%, 80%, 100% in terms of being on target? Are we're that confident that we
In
can
terms
say?
of schedule?
Yes.
It is an incredibly aggressive schedule. It is incredibly aggressive. So, we're going to give it a real go. How about that? And
I appreciate the try. How about, what's the worst case you could see?
oh, it'll hit. There'll be liquidated damages that'll kick in. There'll be pressures. If they don't hit the 4 month, it'll be 4.5 months. It'll, you know, it's a. Yeah.
So you would say by June for sure?
Yep.
Because I think that's one of the important things for people to know, because, you know, they're experiencing an increase in their water rates, and they're also told they can't water their lawns, or at least, you know, they're in a voluntary ban. So I think people kind of want to know what the situation is. The second thing I heard, the second number I heard was $3.3 million. Is that in excess of insurance coverage that will be the city's portion to pick up, or is that not including the insurance coverage? So what would the net be?
So the 3.3 million is what the insurance company has estimated the damage at. It's a little bit of a gray area right now because we're still trying to figure out what we're putting back in there. So technically, I think we're probably at a couple of $100,000 right now. That's the city's portion of that. That's a good faith estimate of what isn't the fire isn't responsible for. It's either above the 3.3 or it's below the 3.3. That probably is a good representation of the range that we're talking about in terms of costs.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear because the things that people will hear is it's going to cost the city $3.3 million, and what you're saying is the insurance is going to, it looks like they see it as a $3.3 million claim that they're going to pay, and then we'll have our deductible plus a couple $100,000 to get to the improvement level that we should be at, that we would have had to get to eventually anyway.
Yes, thanks for clarifying. So that doesn't include the water quality improvements that we're talking about to handle the regulations that have come down the pike, but that is accurate to make water.
Great. And the last thing is more of a comment than a question, is that I think if nothing else, the meeting tonight, and it's brought a lot of facts out, but it also helps to enlighten people on how slow it is to do something with public funds. You know, bid laws were put in place to protect the public interest, but sometimes you almost wonder, what are they protecting? Because as Council Sinowitz pointed out, you know, had this been his business or anybody else's business, you would have anticipated what the choke points are, hired the contractors. I would dare say you'd probably be done with the project by now, because you would have ordered the parts, because you would have been okay to do so, knowing that the insurance company accepted the claim. But because we have this tremendous burden of the bid law put upon our shoulders, it slows everything down. 60 days for bidding, full specifications, 100 days to draw up, you know, it's like this crazy elongation of a timeline. And I would hope that you know, if nothing else, that this provided the citizens with an explanation so they don't look poorly on the people who are trying to get it done as quick as possible. But there's a lot of barrier in their way. Hopefully someday that'll go away, but probably not in my lifetime. But there's a lot that they have to contend with, and they're doing the best they can to deal with that. So I appreciate you coming out and talking to us and helping us all understand that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if there are no objections, I'd rather move on to the next item. But thank you, Mr. Terenzoni. I think Council Sinowitz.
So the contractor that we're hiring to do the install, in the specifications, is this a 9-to-5 contracting company? Or are we going to incentivize these people to work, you know, 16-hour shifts, like Councilor Gravel said, what's the choking point of getting this up and running? If we can save a month, that's $250,000. I don't know how Dan is doing that, but it seems to me that would be something that, I don't want Joe's Carpentry to come in and work 9 to 5 and then leave. They should be working 7 days a week at that kind of a debt structure that we're going to owe. So I don't know if that's any part of that process, but.
So the contractor is required to be DCAM certified. So that is.
What does that mean?
It means they have to be specialized to work in water and wastewater treatment plants. So that takes the Joe contractor off of the table. With regards to the overtime, there are costs associated with overtime. We left it open for the contractor. He will determine, based off of our schedule in our liquidated damages, how he uses that overtime lever. And I'll be honest with you, he's going to use it carefully, because he's not going to estimate the job paying time and a half overtime all the time. So that takes care of, that answers that question, right? And with regards to the incentives, we did talk about incentives, and we were, the procurement laws work better with a damage clause than they do with an incentive clause. So what happens if they don't hit their 4 months is they'll have to start coming up with $500 a day, which will, you know, it'll change the decisions that they make about overtime and working Saturdays. But we left it open for them. We basically gave them the plant 7 days a week, however many hours a day you need.
Because what I'm hearing is maybe March, maybe June, and that's a significant impact on this city. So I would like to see, you know, Dan knows his job, but I would love to see some deadlines and then have them quoted. We need it online March 1st. What's it going to take to get it online March 1st?
That's what's in the contract. What you just described is what is in the contract.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So, thank you, Madam Chairman, for that.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Stanton. I think that the council and everyone that presented tonight, Mayor, thank you very much. I think that the council is very confident now, moving forward, that this is being handled in the efficient, effective manner. So I thank you very much. And Mayor, if I could request that we meet again in January so that we can get another update on how things are moving along.
I couldn't agree more, absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming tonight. This is an excellent presentation. I appreciate it very much. And next is, if we could go down to C, if there are no objections, refer this over to Councilor Turco, as it was his item. Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mrs. Chairwoman. So my question was basically just to get a rough estimate of what this was going to cost the taxpayers, or the ratepayers, I should say. So if my estimates are right, we're looking at anywhere from 12 to 15 months on MWRA, which is anywhere from 3 to 3.75, 3,750,000, and we get $1 million back. So worst case scenario, we're looking at $2,750,000 in overages for MWRA. Am I, through you to Mr. Gingrich, am I accurate in that? And have we come up with a possible number?
Right now, on the material that I handed out, we're a little over $1 million based on the current year's rate. The amount of MWRA water that we've used so far compared with the prior year. You have to realize that we've been using approximately $2 million worth of MWRA water anyway. So the difference is going to be the 1.3, because you were talking about 3.3. So about 1.3 probably.
Okay, and I'm not sure if this is a question for you, just something that jumped out at me, and maybe you might need Dave Terranzoni's help with this, but for some reason in April, if you go month by month, almost all the months are pretty equivalent. You know, they ration out equally, but for some reason in April, for the 2016 MWRA water used was 47,928.36, but it's 5 times that amount for additional cost in April, which isn't a big water usage month that I would think of. And the only thing I could think of is possibly that's the water usage from the fire, from the previous month, but I couldn't.
No, but if you look at April and May, they're pretty close.
Yeah, the current year they're pretty close, but
Yeah.
in the
Oh,
prior...
in the prior year? Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's a drastic difference in just, I guess my question is in regards to
I would venture to guess it had to do with water quality, and they were using more water, or less water last April to mix.
Okay, so back to the original question. So the $1 million overage, excuse me, the $1 million coverage from the insurance, what do we anticipate? Because I think this council kind of looked toward going to the reserves to make up the difference. What would we be looking at in the end?
Well, we'd have to wait and see how it plays out in terms of the September through February usage from MWRA. looks like worst-case scenario, we'd have about $2 million of extra MWRA water, less, say, 800,000 from the insurance claim, because we already used some of that insurance money. So, 1.2.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything further on that? Thank you. And thank you very much, Mr. Gigrish. And the last issue then would be the issue of bringing city sewage to Farm Ave, and that is also Councilor Turco. So if there are no objections, Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairwoman. If I could, I'd like to keep this item in subcommittee. Currently, we're in discussions. Actually, I should say the mayor, myself, and the residents are in discussion, unless the mayor would like to address it at this point.
I think you were just, Madam Chairman, if I could, you were just addressing it. It was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now. Councilor Turco and I met with all the Farm Ave neighbors. Every single one was there. It was a great meeting. And perhaps if we could maybe keep this in committee for one more meeting. There was real, I think, positive strides made, and I think we can give a better report if maybe you give us another month or so. If we keep this in committee for a future meeting, Madam Chairman?
That's fine, sure. If there are no objections, that's fine.
Because I know the residents would be here normally, but because of the meeting, I think we've addressed their situation, or have a plan to address their situation. That's why they're not here, and I think it would be better able to explain that in the next meeting.
Sure, that's fine. We'll keep it in committee. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. All in favor, any opposed? Thank you very much.
There's 2 new appointments, new gentlemen. The others are reappointments, and there's 2 new appointments.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to start the meeting with a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone could rise, please. Heard the motion. All in favor and opposed to vote. This meeting is being televised live on cable channel 9 and being taped by Peabody Access TV and also being recorded by our city council stenographer. First up on the agenda, we're going to just, there's a few appointments, so if there's no objections, we're going to move to 7B for some appointments. Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'll be very brief. Bringing forward today two very distinguished people to serve on a couple of our important city boards. First is an opening for an alternate position on the Planning Board. As you know, Planning Board is an extremely important board that plays a role really in every type of development in the city. And we have a Peabody resident with an outstanding background that I'm bringing forward today, Matt Genzali. Matt is a family man, 2 young kids. He owns a construction company here in Peabody, MRG Construction. He's on the Chamber of Commerce. He's involved in the Peabody Main Streets program. I think many of you know his work. And he's doing he's volunteering significant hours to the Black Box Theater. And I think it'd be an excellent addition to the Planning Board. And I'm very, very enthusiastic, very pleased that he'd be willing to take that on with all the other many things he does for our community. And I wanted to put forward Matt Genzali's name for the alternate position on the Planning Board. And Matt is here today.
And did Matt want to say anything?
Thank you, Ted. Good evening. How are you? Good, thanks. Just make a statement, or? Okay, great. No, just really, thankful for the honor that Ted's extended to me to join the planning board. Just really enjoy being a part of this community. I think I've said it before here. My wife and I just love the people, and we're glad that this is the community we made to be our home for the long term. Sorry, a little lower. And so, I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of great people. Dave has certainly been a great mentor in getting me involved with the city in volunteering and through any boards and committees that I can be on. I'm thrilled to be the co-chair of the Main Streets Economic Vitality Committee with Dave. And I feel like the planning board is a nice play on that, where I could hopefully learn something and also be impactful with what that committee's trying to achieve as well. So just really excited to get the chance to do this. So
thank you very much. Councilors? Councilor Gravel?
Yeah, I can't say enough about Matt in terms of his abilities. We happened to use him as a contract manager on our project when we moved over to Centennial. Great guy, always looking out for the best interests of his clients. And anytime anybody's gone to him and asked, can you help, he's just offered that hand so willingly and said yes. And brilliant in terms of the building trades. So I think he'd be a great addition to the planning board. And I think he's doing it for the right reason. His heart's in it, and he wants to do a good job for us. So thank you very much for stepping up and volunteering, Matt.
Thanks, Dave.
Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just also want to say thank you, Matt. Every time I ask you to help with something or somebody else asks you, you step right up, and thank you very, very much for what you do for us.
Thank you, Tom.
Councilor Turco.
Thank you. I won't jump on too much, but I just wanted to say congratulations to Matt. And I've only been doing this for 2 years, but very seldom do people reach out to you and ask you how they can help in the ward. Matt is a Ward 1 resident, and what the issues of the ward are, and how they can lend a hand. And Matt did that, and I think he might have regretted it after listening to me for 2 hours. But again, welcome aboard, and thank you very much.
Councilman McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just add to the comments of my fellow councilors of Mr. Genzali. I've really enjoyed working with him in his capacity on Main Streets, as well as his involvement with the Black Box Theater. And again, I thank him for his willingness to increase his level of civic involvement and engagement here. If there's other comments, if you could circle back to me, I'd love to make a motion.
Council Sidowitz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Congratulations, Matt. Welcome.
Thank you.
And I'll be seeing you next month, so be kind to us on Birchwood Estates.
Oh, that'd be
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion to receive? Councilman McGinn
So moved.
and Council McGinn.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to do these one by one, or do you want to do them in? Okay, I'd like to move to approve the appointment of Mr. Matthew Genzali, 3 Julie Circle, Peabody, Mass., to the position of the Planning Board for the term to expire, 5-year term to expire 5/31/2022. So moved.
Heard the motion. Roll call vote.
Councilors Manning Martin.
Yes.
Garabedian.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Sinowitz.
Yes.
Sasslaw. Motion carries 11 to
Thank you very
nothing.
much.
And I feel very fortunate to bring forward another name of a gentleman I feel very pleased is willing to help us. Some of you may have met Jerry Krastowski along the way. Jerry is as you saw in his resume, has a very distinguished business career. And most recently, he's been working over at Peabody High School as a monitor. And he just expressed to me a desire to be involved, wants to contribute to the city he cares deeply about. And I was thrilled that he would be willing to consider working on the Conservation Commission. Again, as you all know, a very important board that's charged with protecting the city and our wetlands, and some difficult issues go through there. And I'm very pleased that Jerry would be willing to tackle that for us. I did want to mention the opening is as a result of the retirement of Joel Whitman. And I would ask the City Council to maybe do a special recognition of Joel. Joel was on the Conservation Commission for over 20 years. Which is, Conservation Commission over 20 years is a pretty incredible accomplishment. But perhaps the council would entertain maybe sending something to him, some sort of congratulations or recognition for a job well done. We are moving Mr. Craig Welton, who's been an alternate member of the board, moving him up to a full member, and Jerry would come on as an alternate member. And again, very fortunate that we have a gentleman willing to give back some of his life experience to help our city. And Jerry is here today, and I may like to say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jerry Kuskowski, obviously. I'll be quite brief. I want to thank you for the opportunity this evening. I'll give you a little bit of my background. I was born in Great Britain. I spent 10 years there and immigrated to the United States. I spent the bulk of the time in Rhode Island. I received a bachelor's degree from the Roger-Williams University and my master's degree from the University of Rhode Island. Moved up to Peabody, met my wife Sandy, and I've been here for 34 years, so I'm almost a Peabody guy, but I'm not quite there yet. My children are part of the Peabody school system, and they've been very good to me. Peabody's been wonderful to my family, and I'd be happy to do anything I can to help as far as whatever you need. I'm a pretty bright guy, and that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jerry. Council Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jerry is my friend and neighbor, and Jerry brings nothing but positiveness and that same personality you just saw to every activity that he gets involved in. So thank you, Jerry, very much for offering your services to us.
Council Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just very quickly, I'd just like to congratulate the mayor on all 3 appointments. I think these recommendations are excellent. All great people, and I think they're going to serve the citizens of Peabody very well. So, great appointments.
Can I have a motion to receive, please? Councilor McGinn.
Move to approve the appointment of Jerry Kruskowski 22A Colonial Road, Peabody, Mass., to the Conservation Commission, alternate position, 2-year term to expire 9/30/2020. And Craig Welton, 195 Lynn Street, Peabody, Mass., to the position of Conservation Commission, term to expire 9/30/2020, 3-year term. So moved.
The motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Manning Martin. Garabedian.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Sinowitz.
Yes.
Sasla.
Yes.
Motion carries 11 to nothing.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. President?
Yes.
On the recommendation of the mayor, I'd like to have the city council honor Mr. Joe Whitman in some form. Tim, if you could help with that, send it to him or have him come in, whatever my colleagues would like to see. But thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the recommendation. So moved.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? To vote.
And if I could, we are still a little light on the Cable Commission. If anybody watching that would like to serve on the Cable Commission, or if any of the councilors have any ideas, I'll tell you, there's nothing more exciting than a Peabody Cable Commission meeting. But if you do have any ideas, we are a little light on that board. All the other boards were doing very well, but thank you.
You know, Mr. Mayor, I know of a city councilor who's going to be leaving fairly shortly, who I think would be very interested in that position.
Barry, you want to do that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving forward, we'll go to hearings. Just one quick piece of news. Peabody won 21-0 at Revere. I just want to get that out there. They got their first W, the varsity football team. Moving to hearings, 4A, special permit. That'd be Imam's Village, LLC, 635, 637 Lowell Street. The clerk will please read the special permit notice.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody, acting as a special permit granting authority, will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, September 28, 2017, at 7:30 p.m. in the Frank L. Wigan Auditorium, City Hall, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass. On the application from a Mom's Village LLC, 233 Haverhill Street, North Reading, Mass. For a special permit to operate a women's physical fitness facility and child enrichment center at 635-637 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass. Is filed in accordance with sections 4.2.5, 6.1, and 15.7 of the Peabody zoning ordinance. Peabody City Council, Councilor Joel D. Sasla, City Council President.
Thank you. And if you could just state your name and your address for the record and tell us what you'd like to do.
Mr. President, members of the council, thank you for having us tonight. My name is Dan Hester. I represent WS Development, the property manager, address 33 Boylston Street, Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts. And I'm introducing the two co-owners of Imam's Village, Stephanie Cohen and Cindy Solomon, and we're very excited to welcome them to the plaza. And I'll let them tell you about their business. Thank you.
Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Stephanie Cohan. My address is 233 Haverhill Street in North Reading. Good evening. Thank you all for your time. As you said, we're here from Imam's Village. We are basically a clubhouse for moms. We're a place where moms can come, get a workout, get a little bit of me time while their kids are in our high-quality child watch. And we will also have children's programming as well. We're just really excited about the community, and we're really excited to bring our vision, our mission of making motherhood a little bit easier, healthier, and more fun to the community. So, thank you.
Is there anybody who'd like to speak in opposition to the petitioner? Anybody who'd like to speak in opposition to the petitioner? Anybody like to speak in favor of the petitioner? Anybody like to speak in favor of the petitioner? Being none, Council Sinowitz.
Thank you, Mr. President. So for the council, Imam's Village wants to move into the Big Y. It used to be Hannaford, now it's the Big Y Plaza. So we met and we tried to get this on 2 weeks ago, but because of restraints, and I apologize that we couldn't do that. So I know you were on a tight deadline. So there's a vacant storefront in there now. They're going to go in there, and they want to go in there and operate their business. When TJ Maxx Plaza gets renovated, it's going to be subdivided, and maybe Dan can just tell us a little more about that. They're going to move their operation. They'll come back for another special permit to move down to a bigger facility once the TJ Maxx building is renovated. And it's a pretty, I think it's a good use for the plaza. It's kind of like a high-end, moms can go in there, work out. I asked them about their children's program. The employees will be Corey checked. So it's not just a gym where they throw teenagers in to watch kids. I just think their hours of operation were pretty basic. I didn't see anything there, 5:45 to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 7 to 6. No outdoor classes, right? Everything stays inside the building, okay? And I don't really have any other comments. I just would like Dan to let the council know what's happening with that property right there, while he's here.
Thank you, Councilor. Yes, as Councilor Sinowitz said, a Mom's Village will be temporarily moving into the space between Casual Cuts and Nail Co., which is about 2,200 square feet for the time being, while we continue to find other prospects for the TJ Maxx vacated box there, which a Mom's Village will be taking approximately 6,000 square feet of, which leaves us roughly 18,000 left to lease. I'm not in the leasing department. I only help with entitlements, so I can't speak too much to it, but we do have some prospects for that space. Obviously, with that, there is only one storefront that's over there, so there will be a subdivision of spaces there. There will be revised storefronts there, so architecturally it will be brought up to represent as if there were more than just one storefront there.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. And the registry did put in an application to the registry, so we'll see where that goes. I don't have any other questions. I'll open up to the council.
Councilors? Council begin.
Thank you, Mr. President, and through you to Councilor Sinowitz. I'm sure you probably saw in the package there was a real estate tax bill, and it's unclear because it doesn't seem connected with the collector's input to the special permit, so it just seems to be kind of arbitrarily in here. I know that as tenants they would not be on the hook for this, but I think we have somebody representing the management company here, so is that something that came up in the discussions?
I did, through the Dan, I did approach Dan right before the meeting. He wasn't aware of this. It says payment says of $828, $88,350. I don't know if that was paid or not paid. It says balance due 0, due date 8/1. So I was kind of vague on that. It looks like it's saying there's a balance, but then it says there's 0 due. So and I wouldn't, hold this up based on that because we're talking 8/1. It's a month, so I don't have any issues with that. But I appreciate, I saw it, I just didn't even want to go there. But
thank you, Mr. President.
I just looking, I interpret it as that they made the payment in the first bill that was due on 8/1, and they have a balance due on the second bill that's due November 1st, 2017. That's how I interpret it. Just one man's opinion, but any other councilors? I would just say I would welcome you, and I'd also say to the representative from the real estate company, know that West Peabody values that property. Many people, I can speak on behalf, if you've gone to Facebook, it was difficult, quite frankly, for TJ Maxx to move. Seriously, it really was. And people are waiting with bated breath to see. And I also appreciate, I know that there was some talks about dollar stores and things like that. I think you guys have resisted, and I think the other tenants appreciate that, and I think that the residents really wouldn't want something like that, and I'll be so bold to state that. But we are looking forward to the other three areas that you're going to renovate there, and also obviously you have a little other space there too. But West Peabody supports that plaza quite well, and we're looking forward to your plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate it.
Councilman McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just two other quick administrative things. There's some late communications on these. Yep, go. Yes, absolutely. I'll defer to Councilor Sinowitz.
I was going. There's two late communications here. One is from the fire department, which basically says any change, well, move to receive under suspension of the rules.
For the motion, all in favor, any opposed, a vote.
And basically, this says any changes, modifications to fire alarm, sprinkler systems require permits and inspections from the fire department, so that's fine. The second one I'm objecting to and I'm not receiving. We can receive this at the next meeting. I don't know if I need a motion on that, but I object to this late communication.
No motion needed for that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. So at this time, I would move to close the public hearing. So moved.
Heard the motion. All in favor, any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I move approval of a Mom's Village, 233 Haverhill Street, North Reading, Mass. for a special permit to operate a women's physical fitness center, physical fitness facility and children's enrichment center at 635 to 637 Lowell Street. And what is the unit number you're going into right now?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Is it 3C?
I think it's a couple numbers. 8B. 8B. I can
We'll say 3C.
Thank you.
So moved.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Councilors Manning Martin.
Yes.
Garabedian.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Sinowitz.
Yes.
Sasslaw.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda, we have a Council Turco of a late communication. Could you receive that? And
Move to receive a late communication from Attorney Kelty requesting that today's meeting be continued till October 12th.
heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? To vote. Reports of committee.
Separate motion, Mr. President. Move to continue the meeting till October 12th.
Heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? To vote. Reports of subcommittees. First up, Legal Affairs Committee, Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, the Legal Affairs Committee met. I think almost everybody was here in attendance at that meeting. There were several items on the agenda. Two were held in committee. One was item A, which was the ordinance to allow the police department to permanently remove people who are intoxicated from participating. There's more work that needs to be done on that. And then we also held for a further meeting or a future meeting the request for license to enter work in easement area of Site 10 residences at 194 rear Newbury Street. We did have a discussion on item B, which is the retail recreational marijuana ban, and a motion was made to refer the proposed language for an ordinance forbidding retail marijuana establishments. We referred that to the planning board. So moved.
You've heard the report. Any questions? Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you.
No, Mr. Excuse me.
Yes.
The motion was to refer to the planning board. So should that not be a motion here fully accepted by everybody? It's not really just a report. It's a motion.
You've heard the motion. Discussion on the motion?
Yes, and if I could, I was not at the meeting. I was in traffic, but was there any discussion about the language, or did you just refer, was it discussion, or did you just refer the language as written, as recommended?
Through you, Mr. President, there was some discussion, but yes, ultimately, the language that is proposed here is what is being referred to the planning board.
could you share the discussion?
Sure. Both Mayor Betancourt and our city solicitor were present, and just the mayor reiterated his stance on not allowing retail marijuana establishments in the city. He believes that there are too many detrimental factors and that it would not ultimately be good for the city. And then our city solicitor discussed the fact that we need to address this really within the next year, just after that, the moratorium that we now have in place would stay in place until we adopt an ordinance that would then supersede that.
Thank you. So there was discussion that because Peabody voted against it, we have, I think, 2 years to figure out how we want to move forward and what we're going to do with the ordinance. But we have 2 years to do that.
I'm sorry. That's correct. Through you again, Mr. President, is that we need to take action on or before January of 2019.
Yes. Okay. And was there any discussion about, since we had, prior to the state legislature's latest changes in the law, was there any discussion that since we voted to send it back to the voters under the old law, was there any discussion that we do that, that we allow that as well, so that although it will not be binding because of the change in the law, was there any discussion to continue to send that out so that we can get a gauge on what the voters think now that the law has changed?
It is the city solicitor's opinion that we do not have that option, and I believe the mayor explained this as well. That option would not be before us until at the earliest 2020.
It would not be before us if we sent it out in conjunction with the new law.
Correct, because the new law allows this council to make that decision. So that supersedes or almost negates the need for a referendum.
If I may. Yes, it does. But I guess I apologize for missing that meeting of all meetings, but 6 o'clock is something I can't make it to, coming in from Boston. But the voters, my concern is if people question the constitutionality of the recently changed law and it gets overturned, wouldn't we be in a better position to go out yet again to our voters? We've already voted on it. It wouldn't be binding to get another gauge, so that if it is turned over, we can say, well, we've gone out to them twice. And I just think we would have a better footing because I have a sense this isn't the end of it with what the state legislature handed down. So I'm just sensing that since we've already put a vote forward to go out to the voters, I understand the new law makes it non-binding, but there's nothing in this new law that says we cannot do that. And I would just wonder why we wouldn't just continue to move forward to get a better gauge and better footing should yet again this be overturned in, say, 2 to 3 years, that it's not constitutional.
Well, I don't know that we want to have this whole debate here, but you know, if that's the will of the council, that's fine. But I also think that we need to refer the language and at least let the planning board offer their opinion on the language that was in our committee. I would refer you to item 8A, which was the city solicitor's opinion.
Motion to receive.
So, and honestly, I guess my answer would be that if you think the law is going to change 2 years down the road, then any activities we take, whether we do a non-binding referendum question or anything else, doesn't mean that all that, I mean, I think what we have is going to stay. There may be some legal challenges, but I honestly don't, I don't think that we can sit here and say, oh my God, we can't go with the law that is now in place because something might change. I don't think that's...
No, I'm not suggesting. I understand you want to move the language forward to the planning board. I'm fine with that. I missed the meeting, so I wanted to know if there was discussion about still going forward with our previous motion to put it towards the voters again, so that, again, we can be on better footing. Should we follow, you know, I'm in agreement with the mayor, but I'd prefer to be on better footing, and if you go back out to the voters, it's already in motion to go out there on the November ballot. Why is that? The clerk is saying it's not on the November.
It's not. Though based on, I was advised that based on the act of the legislature, the ballot question is basically null and void, and it's not required to go on the...
Right, it's not required.
Yeah.
We did take, it was a vote of this committee, so it probably should have been a vote of this committee to remove it. So there seems to have been action that's been taken that kind of negates my effort to continue to move forward to get a better gauge of what the citizens of Peabody want to do. Because they didn't vote on the current law, they voted on the previous law. So I would have had a better, I would have rather gotten a gauge on what they feel about the current law, because it has changed, and that would have been an effort for us to get their feedback, and evidently it's been stripped from us, and the council didn't make that motion to remove it. So my argument is probably moot at this point.
Next up was the reports of subcommittees, ad hoc committee on golf course, Councilor Sinowitz. Excuse me, I need a motion to accept. Right, we had a discussion, I apologize.
So we need a vote, Mr. President, requesting a vote on the motion to refer the language to the planning board.
You've heard the motion.
So moved.
Discussion, roll call vote.
Councilors Manning Martin.
Yes.
Garabedian.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Walsh. Yes. Mitsoulas. Charis.
Yes.
Sinowitz. Sasla.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Thank you, Council Walsh. And committee on the golf course, Council Sinowitz, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had some lively discussion on the golf course. Everything from refinancing bonds to evaluation studies of the golf course, how to improve revenues, talking about how to improve their food, this and that. So out of this whole thing, we had two motions. And the first motion was request that Mayor Betancourt look into a company that will come in and do an overall evaluation of our golf course operations and make recommendations to improve it. So moved.
Further motion, any discussion on the motion? Roll call vote.
Councilors Manning Martin.
Yes.
Garabedian.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Gould. McGinn. Walsh.
Yes.
Mitsoulas. Charis.
Yes.
Sinowitz.
Yes.
Sasla. Motion carries.
The second motion was, and we talked about the debt service. So the next motion is to request that the mayor and the finance director look at the refinancing of the remaining bond at the golf course over a 10-year period and present to the council accurate figures of what that's going to mean in terms of monies. Secondly, part of that, additional to that, Councilor Gravel brought up a point of possibly the city looking in whether the city to accomplish the same thing, being it as an enterprise zone, pay off that debt. The golf course pays back to the city. And we'd really accomplish the same thing. We might save a little money also. But there was the question of the enterprise zone, whether we could do it that way. So there's two parts to that motion, one on the bond and one on the city actually buying that out. Are we good on that, Tim? Okay, so moved.
For the motion, any discussion? I had a point. So what I was trying to understand, Council said once was, so the bond's going to go away, and I think the term used in subcommittee was 2 more fiscal sessions. 2 more.
2020, Mr. President.
So
I believe 2020.
And so the purpose of bonding was to use new, I will say, additional funds for what reason?
So currently with the bond, and we went through this discussion, but when the bond has to be part of the discussion in their overall budgetary cost to run the golf course. So they lost money this year. What that final figure was, I don't know, but at the budget time was $111,000 when you factor in the bond. So they said they had some more revenues come in. He gave me that at the last minute. I couldn't sit down and digest the whole thing. Even on a good year, I think they made $7,000. So the point of this was to refinance over the time, and then there'd be some excess cash there. And what we'd be doing is we would be continue to pay off the debt, start paying back immediately the CDA loan, the community development loan, and then with that some of that excess cash, put it into the general fund to use it with other projects or whatever, however they deem fit. So there's 3, and then the fourth part of that is to upgrades at the golf course, because right now they have no money to do anything. They want to build a driving range for $40,000. They don't have any money. Certainly not coming to well, it won't be my vote, but I'm not going to pay $40,000 to something that's losing money. So by refinancing, it does extend it out more than years, but you immediately start paying back your CDA loan. You immediately start getting cash into the cash reserves. You start have money to upgrade your kitchens, your driving range, your clubhouse. So it's kind of all good. I mean, that was the point of it.
But if the bond is retired in 2 years and you don't get a new bond, and our payment on the bond is the interest of the bond, I believe now is about approximately $480,000 per year. If you retire the bond, aren't you then going to now be able to have that close to $500,000 a year that it'll be earning, that you can use for those other things that you just talked about?
Thank you. I understand your question, Mr. President. So I'd say this to you, Mr. President, that if it rains a lot next year, and they have lousy revenues, we're going to lose $111,000 and they don't have any money in their cash reserves. Where's the $111,000 coming from? And if they lose money the second year, we could be in the hole a couple $100,000. So that's the purpose of it. The way they, now you can certainly let it ride. Let it ride, because you're going to go to the taxpayer and say, this is the second straight year we lost $111,000 on our golf course. Pay it. So you can let it ride and try to go the whole term and not bleed. And then when that's done, they got to pay back $1.5 million to the CDA loan. So it's not going to be this $485,000 in cash there. They're going to spend money to upgrade. They got to pay what, $150,000 a year to the CDA loan. I think Councilor McGinn said. So it's how you want to do it. It's you get some security there, knowing there's going to be a lot of free cash. It's short money over 10 years at a low interest rate. That's the logic behind it, and it takes the pressure off of them, because I don't see a firestorm of pounding fists to do this or to do that. So it takes the pressure off, and we don't have to talk about liquor licenses, Councilor McGinn. We don't have to talk about that and have that discussion. So that's the logic behind it.
And I understand, I guess sometimes when I look at it from the layperson's perspective is once I pay my mortgage on my house, I never want to get another mortgage again. And maybe it's not a fair analogy, but as I said, I know we always talk about that debt, that debt service of close to $500,000 will go away, and those funds can be used for something. But I appreciate what you're saying, and I just wanted to clear that for my own edification.
I would say that if you want to make, just like in my business, if I'm bleeding money because I have a loan that's just killing me, and because of that loan, I look at it and how do I get out of this loan? So I try to refinance it the best way I can to bring my overhead down so I can pay for everything else that I want to do. In a mortgage, if your mortgage is $2,000 a month and you're only taking $1,500, what are you going to do? You're going to wait 2 years till your car payment is paid off, and then I'll have the money, but you're going to bleed for 2 years. So I think we've beaten this to death, but
no, it was just good discussion.
I think there's a motion on the floor.
I think there's two motions. There are two motions. And this is the motions on the refinancing of the bond. Roll call vote.
Councilors Manning Martin.
Yes.
Garabedian.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Mitsoulas. Charis.
Yes.
Sinowitz.
Yes.
Sasslaw.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm all set.
Next up, Public Services Subcommittee, Councilor Ann Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did meet this evening, and joining us was Miss Leah Stanton of Western and Sampson, Lieutenant Chris Dowling in the Fire Department, the Mayor, and Mr. Healy of the Facilities Director. And they all addressed and were very helpful to the Public Services Committee. And Lieutenant Dowling discussed the fire at the treatment plant, and we got a kind of a start to finish to get us a status update of what's going on at the water treatment plant. And there was a lot of discussion at this subcommittee. And the fire was caused by an electrical light, and it was an electrical shortage, and birds' nests caught fire, and we all know the catastrophic results of the fire. And the roof repairs should be were completed by the end. Excuse me, they were completed at the end of July, but the building, they couldn't get in the building, and for safety reasons, the building was not structurally sound. So they submitted two waivers, were submitted to DCAM, and the first waiver, due to the emergency, was approved. And again, the second waiver that they put in, again, because it was not structurally sound at the point so they couldn't have workers in there or equipment, they put a waiver out that was not approved because DCAM found that that is not an emergency situation for the equipment. So we have gone out for bids. The bids close October 4th. 2 more phases remain. The equipment has been pre-ordered, and the second portion is the internal renovations will be completed. Ms. Stanton explained that she hopes to have the water back online by February 2018. She does admit, though, that that is an aggressive date, and a less aggressive date would be June 2018, but I think that the council felt confident after the presentation by all those mentioned that everything is being done to get the treatment plant up and running as quickly as possible to cut down on costs. And it was a very good presentation, and I think everybody's pretty confident that all that can be done is being done as best and as fast as possible to cut down on costs and get us up and running again. There was another item on the agenda, which was bringing city sewage to Farm Ave. That was kept in committee, and Councilor Turco had requested a comparison for MWRA water usage between this year and last year, and Mr. Gingrich went over those numbers, And of course, we're using more MWA water this year because of the predicament that we're in, but he did review those numbers. And the next meeting that we're going to have is January, we'll set one up in January, Tim, please, so that we can continue to work with the mayor and the city services to monitor and work with them in getting the water treatment plant up and running as soon as possible, given that this is $250,000 a month for MWRA water. There's not one person that I know of that wants to slow this down, but rather speed it up. And so it was a great presentation. I think the council is very confident that all that can be done is being done. So there were no motions at that meeting, and that is a report of progress, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Walsh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Just through you to Councilor Manning Martin. There was discussion, excellent meeting, by the way. I thought that was a very helpful meeting to all of us. But we did have a discussion, and they did say they would forward the submissions of the waiver requests. So if we can make sure that we get that, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah. We'll have Tim, if you could send them out individually to the councilors, and also put it into the next meeting that we do have so that we can discuss those. And it was quite a learning process with those waivers, so they went over them very thoroughly. So good point, Councilor. Thank you.
Thank you. Motions, orders, and resolutions. Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you. Under suspension of the rules, if we could move to receive item 8D.
For the motion, all in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
Vote.
And a couple things. This kind of goes along with the Mass. I know a couple of my colleagues enjoyed the Blue Mass this weekend at St. John's, and I wanted to commend the city, the police department, the fire department for getting together, and St. John's Church, and getting together and putting together the Blue Mass. It's going to be an annual Mass, an event, and it was really, really nice. And the idea behind it was, with the loss of our friends and firefighters recently, Danny Pimenta, and in the little bit ago, Jim Rice, the priest said, it came to, his attention that we only get together and honor these folks when they fall. So people wanted to honor our first responders, police and fire, and dedicate the Mass, the Blue Mass, to them, so that we could all appreciate each other while they're here and while we're all here. And it was really, really a lovely service, and I can't commend them enough. And along those lines, the police chief, why I reference item 8D, is the police chief will pass along some thank you notes that he gets sometimes. So there's really a cute one, and it's from a little girl. I'm going to read it to the folks at home. That it was sent on behalf of Officer Jerry Fitzgerald. It's a 9-year-old girl sending her thanks to the nice police officer who stopped and helped them when they ran out of gas on 114. So it's a little girl, she's 9 years old, and her penmanship is excellent. She says, "Dear Chief Thomas Griffin, I ran out of gasoline on Route 114. We had to drive onto the grass, cars were whizzing by, and I was freaked out and scared. I saw Officer Fitzgerald on the other side of the highway. He turned around behind us and asked if we needed help, and we said yes, we ran out of gas. He took my mom's gas can and went to the gas station and came back with it filled. My mom had $3 and gave it to him, but he said, no, give it to the little girl. And I said, thank you. Now I have $6 in my piggy bank. Officer Fitzgerald is a very nice man. Can you tell him he did a very nice thing for us?" She signs her name, and then she says, P.S. I want to be a police officer when I grow up. So it's very nice, and I thank the police chief for passing this along, and I commend Officer Fitzgerald and all the other police officers and first responders that do nice little things like this every day, and I was just so pleased to see this, and I wanted to read it into the record, and I thank you for indulging me.
Thank you, Councilor Manning Martin. Councilor Garabedian.
No.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I do have one more.
I apologize.
I apologize. I forgot it myself. And I just like this little kid's letter so much. I would like to make a motion to refer to finance, taking a look at, something came up at our Public Services Committee regarding insurance. There's a lot of discussion about insurance. And the insurance claim, or the insurance coverer, after the fact said, well, you could have had insurance up to $2 million, where we only had a $1 million claim amount. So I find that disturbing, that we should have gotten that information in advance, given the 10 years or so that we've had this insurance agency, that given they should have known the condition of our buildings and the age of them, that we should have known that in advance. So I'm wondering if this is an error of omission, and that we might be able to recoup some money from the insurance company for an error of omission, that they didn't advise us to go to $2 million over the last 10 years for that building, instead of leaving us at $1 million. So I'd like to refer that discussion to finance, along with under the guise of potentially going back out to bid for insurance company.
Heard the motion? All in
So
favor?
moved.
Any opposed? To vote.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Garabedian.
No motions, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilor Gravel.
Thank you, Council President. I'll keep this brief because it's my 37th anniversary tonight, and I would like to go home. But I did want to first of all thank Councilor Gould, Councilor Cheresk, and Councilor Manning Martin for making their way to the Where in the World event, which was conducted at the YMCA on Saturday evening. The reason I want to commend them is because we were successful at raising over $120,000, which will go directly to kids who wouldn't be able to attend the YMCA without that money. So their efforts are truly appreciated. The winner was a Peabody resident, so it's a national raffle, but it was a Peabody resident, a woman by the name of Lydia Todd, and her husband, Bob Sousa, who we know from the PAWV. Both are Air Force veterans, both are well-traveled, and both decided that if they had one place to go for dinner in the world, they would pick either Australia, India, China, or Bora Bora. So they have up to a year to make their decision, and they'll be on their way. And it was a very successful event, and I wanted to thank, again, I wanted to thank my fellow councilors who were able to attend, because it was a great event, and we look forward to doing it again next year. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Gravel, and congratulations. Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under suspension of the rules, move to receive item 8C.
For the motion, all in favor, any opposed? To vote.
Mr. President, I just wanted to say at a personal level regarding 8C, and for those of you that haven't read it, you should. It's the dismissal of the request for some summary judgments for counts 1 and 2 for the cell phone tower that was proposed for 161 Lynn Street over by Michael's Limousine. And if you read it, you'll see that the council at the time, which I was not on, as well as I think the only two, Councilor Charest and I, weren't on there. But I just wanted to say that you guys did an amazing job. If you read through this, the judge continually says that the council made some very wise decisions and arguments. So on that note, as my colleagues, I just wanted to say thank you. Hopefully with that, lucky with the second portion of that lawsuit over on by the golf course. On that note, I have a motion to repair the sidewalk at 3 Gemma Drive.
Heard the motion, all in favor, any opposed? To vote.
Thank you. Mr. President, last motion. PMLP recently replaced all the lights on Centennial Drive with the 250-watt LED lights, and they discovered there's a gap in lighting at the corner of First Street and Centennial, and I recently met with them, And I would like to have a motion to have Public Services and PMLP replace, add lights at pole number 7 and pole number 5 on Centennial Drive. And the addresses are number 2 Centennial Drive and 0 Centennial Drive.
For the motion, all in favor, any opposed, to vote?
That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you. Council Gould.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under suspension of rules, like to receive late communication, and it is not, does not have a number assigned to it, but it is a request to use the Wigan Auditorium by U.S. Senator Ed Markey for Tuesday, October 10th from 5:30 to 7:30 for a public town hall. So moved, Mr. President.
For the motion for late receipt,
Motion for late receipt, so moved, and then I'd like to make a motion for approval of the use of the town hall, of the Wigan, please.
you have the motion, all in favor, any opposed, to vote?
That takes care of the motion to receive and a motion to approve, please, Mr. President.
Yes, motion approved. Any discussion? All in favor, any opposed, to vote?
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Mitsoulas just had to step out. His wife is not feeling well. He asked me to make a motion to request that the Mass Department of Transportation hold a public hearing in the city of Peabody for the barriers that have been discussed. And Councilor Walsh, maybe you can tell me if that is a legitimate request, the barriers along 128 behind Loris, Tammy, and Northfield. So moved. Is that okay, Councilor Walsh?
That's fine. Just so, I mean, you were here the other night, if I might, Mr. President. We did have a meeting last Thursday evening where the residents of the Tammy Lane neighborhood were present. Also, Paul King from Mass Department of Transportation and others were here to answer some of their questions. The issue is this, just for anybody who's not aware. The Waters River Bridge in Danvers, which is on Route 128, is scheduled to be replaced. Now, if you were driving down 128, you wouldn't even notice the bridge is there because it is flat with the highway. What happened here, unfortunately, is when the advertisements went out, it was advertised as a Danvers project. There was a public hearing held in Danvers, and the neighbors on Tammy Lane, Northfield, that area, were not notified. So we have had some discussions over the summertime. The project manager did meet with the neighbors when there was a 25% design plan in place. It has moved a lot further than that. The neighbors feel that they are negatively impacted. They want a sound barrier. There's a lot of discussion on whether they would qualify or not. There has been a submission for funding. This is an 80% Federal Highway Administration funded project, and there are certain requirements that go along with that. The submission apparently had to be in a couple weeks ago, and a noise abatement study was not conducted. It is our opinion, the mayors, the neighbors, the state delegation, that's at the very least, that noise abatement study should have been part of the submission. So we want that first, and then we will proceed. So as far as I'm concerned, we can have the state here as many times as they're willing to come until we can resolve this issue. But it's going to be a long, hard fight. And I don't want to mislead anybody either, Councilor, that the idea of a sound barrier for this neighborhood, although if I lived there I would want it, this is going to be a very difficult fight, so we have to roll up our sleeves and be realistic and see what we can do.
Thank you, Councilor Gould.
So that is the motion from Councilor Mitsoulas, please. So moved.
Heard the motion. All in favor, any opposed, to vote?
No further motions, Mr. President.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Suspension of the rules, move to receive item 7A. And
Heard the motion. All in favor, any opposed, to vote?
right, and within 7A, move to approve the various reappointments as listed in item 7A by His Honor the Mayor to various positions and various terms as written and submitted to the council. So moved.
For the motion, any discussion? I just had one point, maybe some of the senior members know. The Director of Human Services, 1 year, and I noticed like Director of Finance, 3 years. Is that something that's, anyone know why that might happen, why it's just 1 year where a lot of them are 3 years? Is that something, the employment contract, the city charter? I'm just curious.
If anything, it may be by ordinance. I don't know what the term is, Council, off the top of my head.
Okay, I just was curious. Okay, by ordinance, just was curious. Thank you. You've heard the motion for the appointments. All in favor, any opposed, to vote?
Thank you, Mr. President. Would you like me to take item 8E on your behalf?
That'd be fine, thank you.
Move to receive item 8E and schedule a public hearing. So moved.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, any opposed, to vote?
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I don't know if you want to take this one, and it's kind of mismarked, so I think it's either 8B or 8C, depending on how you...
I believe it's 8C, the one.
It's 8C. And I know do you want to take it or you want me to take it? Move to receive, and this is the announcement of the Colton Buckley Foundation 4th annual 5K road race, and that is scheduled for Sunday, November 12th, 2017, for people that might like to register.
On that motion, if I may. Tim, what is our balance in the drug subcommittee?
I'm not sure, Counselor. I can get that.
It's over $250, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is it proper at this junction? Well, this is to register. I'm sure you want to give another donation at another time. But is it proper at this forum to make a motion for us to, I know we all get together and walk anyway, and make our individual donations, but if Todd has sent us an application, so perhaps we could formally register as a team for $250?
You can take it out of the drug account because it normally goes to the drug subcommittee. But
right, so
if
can
you
we
want-
skip,
if the
can we,
council wants
the
to
full
skip that.
council's here, if there are no objections, that we don't refer to drug subcommittee because it's November 12th, so we can expedite things and register as a team and get our T-shirts and walk together again. And I know that sometimes school committee members join us as well, so the invitation is open to them as well. So if there are no objections, I'd like to make a motion for the City Council to register for $250 to the 4th Annual Colton Buckley 5K, and I look forward to walking with you all again this year.
For the motion, all in favor, any opposed, to vote? And just one last, if anyone has any interest in more further information and they'd like to participate, you can reach out to the foundation, phone number 978-828-1979. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under suspension of the rules, move to receive item 8F and approve.
For the motion, all in favor, any opposed, to vote?
Just as a reminder, councilors are going to need to sign that before they leave tonight. Mr. President, under suspension of the rules, I'd like to receive a late communication that we're on the councilor's desk this evening. And the title across the top is North Shore Mass for Puerto Rico. So moved.
For the motion to receive late communication.
And on that motion, just to provide a little more detail, Mr. President, this is an event that's being organized by a Ward 2 resident, Georgiana Melendez, and it is a community meeting to be held on October 3rd between 6 and 7:30 p.m. at the Turigian Community Life Center. And the reason for the meeting is to bring people together to coordinate efforts to send aid to Puerto Rico. We are linking with larger efforts in Boston and creating local opportunities for channeling assistance. The meeting is an opportunity to brainstorm and to plan next steps. They're looking for volunteers to be part of a planning committee and for sorting and prepping donations. Again, that meeting is October 3rd at the 6 p.m. at the Turigian Community Life Center, and the contact information, if you'd like more information, the phone number is 978-595-2022. Again, 978-595-2022. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman McGinn. Council Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have one motion. This is a co-motion with you. And the motion is to request the Department of Public Services to paint a 20-foot box on either side of the access and egress areas of 10 Dearborn Road. And on that motion, Mr. President, this request is coming from Bridgewell, who is the owner of the building now. But what's happening is because so many cars park on Dearborn Road, the personnel from Bridgewell, as well as many of their clients, are having difficulty entering or exiting because the cars are parking right up to the driveways. So the request is that with the hash marks painted, the cars will park a little bit further back, as they're required to do anyway. And this is just a way to notice that and give a much clearer visibility of, give clearer visibility to those who are leaving or entering the property. So moved.
For the motion, all in favor, any opposed to vote?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Council Charis.
Thank you. A couple of motions. First, I asked to have the fire department check the timing of the lights at the intersection of King Street, Lowell Street, and Endicott. So move.
For the motion, all in favor, any opposed to vote?
To repair the potholes at the end of Augusta and James Street. So move.
For the motion, all in favor, any opposed to vote?
To, as we talk about hash marks, to look at doing the hash marks, I mentioned this before, on Lowell Street from Jennifer Lane, going westerly to Forest Street. There's going to be some accidents, major accidents there. If someone's going to be in that lane, there's a sign there, DPS put it up, and I'm grateful for that, but the cars are just zipping down the left-hand side. If you're too far on the left, they come down on the right-hand side. There's been a couple of small accidents. There's going to be a major accident. So move, and also a hash marks on going easterly on Lowell Street towards Endicott Street, the same thing. There's a left-hand turn there. Cars are coming down Lowell Street and doing the exact same thing. I've seen cars stop to have people walk across the street and nearly get hit because they're not seeing them. So move.
For the motion, all in favor, any opposed to vote?
I asked for the city to reach out to DPS and Electric Light to install lights on the poles of Essex Center Drive as permitted. So move.
For the motion, all in favor, any opposed to vote?
And I asked, excuse me? No, the city owns it now. We took that over? Yeah. As I'm out and about, I hear a lot of people talk about why the city doesn't have another cable company come in. Why don't we allow it? I know, we all know the reason, and it's not the city. And I also know, talking to the commissioners of the Cable Commission, of their frustration. So if we can ask for them to come in and do a little presentation and for them to explain their difficulties that they have, I think the residents will understand a little bit more about what's going through. So move.
For the motion, all in favor, any opposed to vote?
I'm not sure who that will go through, but I'll leave it up to you. And just to make a footnote, last couple weeks, the Essex Green Drive behind the shopping center and the post office in Leahy, that was all redone. There was a walkway put in by Leahy. Many of the residents there and people who service the post office and the stores there had talked to me saying what a great effort it was with the paving company, DPS, the police detail, everyone who was involved. I gotta tell you, I haven't heard so many compliments about one project and how everyone was so courteous, so kind, and got it done in an efficient way. So hats off to everyone who was involved. I think the residents need to hear often what a great group of people we have here in the city. So move.
Thank you, Councilor Charest. Councilor Sinowitz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion to move to the Parks and Recreation Department, trim or remove the tree at 18 Glen Drive, and if possible, they could communicate with the residents if they're home when they go to the site. So moved.
Further motion, all in favor, oppose the vote.
Secondly, I'd like to make a motion to the electric light plant to install a street light on an existing pole at the corner of Russell and Whipple Streets. So moved.
The motion, all in favor, oppose the vote.
And Birchwood has been pushed back till October, I've heard. I'm hoping it goes to November, but that's good, just to let people know. And Crystal Lake, we had a meeting to talk about the recreational aspect of it, and it's just, I don't know if any of the councilors have been by there, but it looks beautiful. And the wildlife, and it's just going to be phenomenal. It might even have areas where you sit out in the sun, where the kids can fish and boat or whatever. It's going to be quite nice, so I'm proud of that. So, and just an update on what's happening there. Thank you.
Could you receive item 8H?
Under suspension of rules, Mr. President, move to receive item 8H and approve all papers being in order.
The motion, all in favor, oppose the vote.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'd just like to make one motion. I'd like to make a motion, DPS to repair the sidewalk at 5 Price Road. The motion, anyone all in favor and opposed to vote. Item number 9. Council Gravel, item 9 maybe?
Taxi limousine driver license, Alan Macazzini. License number 28, Edward Beardsell, license number 30. Move to receive, approve, subject to all papers being in order.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, opposed to vote. Councilor McGinn, could you receive item 8? Just want to receive item 8G for the record.
Move to receive.
Thank you. Anything else, Councilor McGinn? We good? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.